meeting from the cafeteria of Dennett Educational Complex. The meeting will be open to the public, and the public portion of this meeting will be broadcast live with recording being made available after the meeting as well. We will return from executive session at approximately 6 p.m. for a public meeting, and public comment will be available at that time. Under Section 3-305B of the General Provisions article of the Maryland Annotated Code, there is one reason the board will go into closed session this evening: to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction. Any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. Specifically, the topics for tonight will be 3-305B1, topics including certificated staff recommendations and tenured staff recommendations. The reason this topic will be discussed in closed session instead of open session is as follows. The personnel topics pursuant to 3-305B1 disclosed above will be considered in closed session rather than open session because they include a discussion of specific employees, which is a confidential employment matter. Hearing all of that, is there any objection to the board going into executive session? Hearing none. That being said, is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
So moved by Jason.
Second.
Second by Rodney. All those in favor of executive session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And we are in executive session. Everyone to the regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting tonight of August the 9th, 2022. Before we get started, I want to set just a couple of ground rules that we're going to exercise this evening, because there is a large amount of information that's going to be given out this evening, so I want to make sure that everybody understands how we're going to do a couple of those things. Let's talk a little bit about public comment, as we have several people who have signed up for public comment. I'm just going to read for you our standard statement, but I want to add just a couple of things to that. The Garrett County Board of Education is pleased to receive comments and ideas from our public pertaining to the policies, procedures, and/or practices of the school system. We ask that comments be limited to a maximum time of 3 minutes per individual, unless otherwise considered by the board president. There will be no discussion or action taken at this meeting, but may be considered at a future meeting. Issues that are specific to individual employees should be referred to the immediate supervisors for appropriate consideration and review. Rude, slanderous, or threatening remarks or other behavior that's disruptive or interferes with the order of the meeting is not permitted. So what we're going to try to do, because we do have several people who want to speak this evening, we have on the screen 3 minutes, which is our board policy. Once that 3 minutes is over, Mr. Green will let you know that your 3 minutes is over and thank you for speaking and announce who the next speaker will be. So please finish your sentence, and then please be mindful that there is another speaker who's waiting to speak as well, so that we can keep it moving along. What we'll try to do, because there are a couple of fairly large presentations, one by the superintendent and one by the architectural firm, that Grimm & Parker, the superintendent's will be first. If she's finished by 7:30, we may go ahead and do public comment right at 7:30, or we may start with Grimm & Parker and then break them off and do the public comment as close to 7:30 as possible. So we'll see how long things take, but we do have a lot of information that we want to share with you tonight, and we do want to give you the opportunity to speak about that information. So with that being said, I think we're ready to begin. We will start with a moment of silence, if you will rise for that moment of silence, and we will have our Pledge of Allegiance after that by our board member, Alexis Schaefer. As you can tell without the microphones, it's difficult to hear. Our air conditioning system is loud, to say the least. So I'll remind each of the board members, when you do want to speak, make sure your mics are on. And when you don't want to speak, make sure your mics are off, so that we can keep everything moving. So with those things being said, I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
Approve.
Motion to approve by Matthew, seconded by Jason. Discussion? All those in favor of the agenda presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And the agenda is approved. We'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Rodney,
Second.
seconded by Matthew. All those in favor of the consent agenda as provided to us, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And the consent agenda is approved. Are there any additions or corrections to the July 12th public session minutes? Let's take a second in case there is anything that needs corrected or additions. Anything?
No.
Nothing? Take a motion as such.
Motion to approve. the
Motion by
July
Jason to
12th.
approve,
Second.
seconded by Matthew. All those in favor of the minutes as presented for July 12th, 2022, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, with nay. Approval of the July 25th, 2022 public session minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Matthew,
Second.
seconded by Monica. Those in favor of the July 25th, 2022 public session minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And those are approved as well. And now, Madam Superintendent, if you'll do the closed session summaries and announcements.
Okay. The Board of Education met in executive session on Tuesday, July 12, 2022 at 4:01 p.m. under Authority 3-305 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to discuss the following items: review of executive session minutes, personnel topics pursuant to 3-305B1, and administrative function topics. Jason Van Sickle made a motion to go into executive session, and Matthew Paw seconded the motion. Final resolution, motion carried with yea votes from Rodney Glotfelty, Matthew Paw, Monica Rinker, and Jason Van Sickle. Jason Van Sickle made a motion to approve the executive session agenda, and Matthew Paw seconded the motion. Thereafter, the board voted to approve the agenda with yea votes from Rodney Glotfelty, Matthew Paw, Monica Rinker, and Jason Van Sickle. The topics discussed in the closed session included the following: executive session minutes from June 14th, 2022. Jason Van Sickle made a motion to approve the June 14th executive session minutes. Monica Rinker seconded the motion. Final resolution, motion carried with yea votes from Rodney Glotfelty, Matthew Paw, Monica Rinker, and Jason Van Sickle. Personnel, certificated staffing recommendations. Ms. Barbara Baker, Superintendent, shared the certificated staff recommendations with the board for their review. Mrs. Baker answered various questions regarding the candidates. The board took action on the staffing recommendations in the public session under the consent agenda. Superintendent evaluation meeting. The board discussed plans for the superintendent evaluation meeting. The board did not take action on this topic. Administrative function. The board discussed various administrative function topics. The board considered these topics but did not take any action on the items. Adjournment, Jason Van Sickle made a motion to adjourn the executive session, and Matthew Paw seconded the motion. Motion carried with yea votes from Monica Rinker, Rodney Glotfelty, Matthew Paw, and Jason Van Sickle. The executive session ended at 5:54 p.m. Mr. Tom Woods, board president, and board members, Dr. Matthew Paw, Mrs. Monica Rinker, Mr. Jason Van Sickle, board members attended the meeting. Mr. Rodney Glotfelty, board vice president, attended the meeting via conference phone. Mrs. Baker, Superintendent, Mr. Hoover, Board Attorney, Ms. Allison Schweitzer, Director of Finance, Ms. Karen Brewer, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, attended all or part of the meeting. The Board of Education met in executive session on Monday, July 25th, 2022 at 11:03 a.m. under Authority 3-305 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to discuss a personnel topic pursuant to 3-305B. Matthew Paw made a motion to go into executive session. Jason Van Sickle seconded the motion. Final resolution, motion carried with yea votes from Monica Rinker, Rodney Glotfelty, Matthew Paw, Jason Van Sickle. The topics discussed in the closed session included the following: the superintendent evaluation. The board discussed the superintendent's mid-year evaluation. Adjournment, Jason Van Sickle made a motion to close the meeting. Matthew Paw seconded the motion. Final resolution, motion carried with yea votes from Monica Rinker, Rodney Glotfelty, Matthew Paw, and Jason Van Sickle. The board adjourned the executive session at 1:59 p.m. Mr. Tom Woods, board president, Mr. Rodney Glotfelty, board vice president, and board members, Dr. Matthew Paw, Mrs. Monica Rinker, and Mr. Jason Van Sickle attended the meeting. Announcements? All right, upcoming announcements. August 12th is the Stuff the Bus event in the Oakland parking lot of the Walmart from 9 till 4. August 17th, 18th, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and 25th is the best class for new teacher orientation at Broadford Elementary School, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. August 23rd is the MABE Board Service Academy of the Open Meetings Act, understanding its significance, avoiding penalties, and ensuring board compliance, virtually 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The Southern Middle, Southern Garrett High School project verification meeting with Grimm and Parker that same evening, Southern Middle School, 6 p.m. August 29th, the Teacher Workday, teachers come back. August 30th through September 2nd is the Staff Development Professional Days. September 1st, tentatively, the Garrett County Public Schools reunion meeting at the CARC in McHenry from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. September 5th, Labor Day, schools will be closed. September 6th will be the first day back for students with a 3-hour dismissal. And October 6th through 8th is the MABE annual conference at the Westin in Annapolis Hotel.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Just real quick, there is another announcement I want to make sure that and we'll certainly get this out beyond tonight. The board has changed the September 13th meeting date to September 19th. It's a Monday. There were some considerations by board members in terms of being available on the 13th, so we have changed it to the 19th. It will be also in this building at that time. With that being said, Mr. Wazlowski will make a presentation for the Grantsville Furniture Award tonight.
Good evening. I'm here to request board approval for the Grantsville Furniture Award in the amount of, got it here, $346,629. I provided information to the board about the furniture bid.
Mr. Wazlowski, you might want to talk a little closer
sorry.
to the microphone. Some people are squinting like they're not hearing.
Okay. This is to provide furniture for the entire school that's under renovation at Grantsville. 360 desks and chairs, art tables, entire media center, including some soft seating and new shelving, teacher lounge, faculty lounge, health suite, main office, music room, STEM lab. So this bid award would take care of furniture for all those spaces. We're looking at a project schedule for delivery on December 5th, and we're going to procure it using a purchasing Sourcewell contract. I provided the number through KI International. Okay.
Ms. Baker, you have a recommendation?
Yes, I recommend that we accept the furniture bid as Mr. Wazlowski has presented it.
Superintendent's made a recommendation to accept the bid as presented by Mr. Wazlowski. Is there a motion as such?
Make a motion to approve the bid.
Motion to approve by Matthew. Second by Jason. We can now have discussion. Questions for Mr. Wazlowski?
So it looks like there'll be no holdup in getting it for December 5th then, the way some things are, a wait time?
Correct.
Okay. So are we getting all new furniture in the school, or will we be using some that's currently already there?
The decision was made, the pre-K furniture is new,
Okay?
and that's in the Head Start side of the building, so we're going to keep that in the pre-K classrooms and then just replace everything else.
So with what you'll be removing from Grantsville might be maybe a better condition in some of other schools. Will you be switching it in to put into other elementary schools?
Yes, we have requests from Accident, Friendsville, and Route 40 to at least look at it and see if it's better than what they have. But yes, we'll try to repurpose as much as we can within the school system.
And then the excess that we won't be using, will it be like up for an auction at some time?
Yeah, we'll bring that to Oakland here, and then we'll try to have our biannual auction here over at the building.
Okay, and I believe, did you say there will be 360 student desk and chairs to arrive?
Yes, we have 12 classrooms that we're doing 30 desks and chairs apiece,
Okay, and you said minus or pre-K?
minus the pre-K, yes.
Okay. I have another question. So we're having the furniture, the projected delivery date is December 5th. Does that mean that the school will be open then shortly after that, the beginning of the year?
Yeah, our plan is right now is we're on schedule for the January 3rd.
Okay.
You can turn it off, yeah. Off. Get your glasses.
So I have one more question. So with the amount that's on here, $346,629, that will be everything that will be needed at a later time. You won't be coming back saying that we need something else for the school, then this will be the whole thing?
This is it.
Furniture?
This is,
Okay.
yeah. And I have to make sure I commend Tracy Miller and her staff. They really picked out, all the furniture, desktops, I mean, it was a pretty extensive, so I have to make sure I commend them for all the work that they did.
I believe that's all that I have for questions. Thank you.
Other questions by board members? Hearing none, there's a motion on the floor to accept the bid as presented in the amount of $346,629 to Kruger International. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And it is awarded. Thank you, Mr. Wisłowski.
Great, thank you.
We'll move on to our next item, which is the superintendent's presentation of the grade band alignment. So if you, Mrs. Baker, if you're ready for that, I think we have it on the screen there, and we'll try to make that as big as we possibly can. No, you're fine. I would say to board members, if you have questions during the presentation, just sort of raise your hand, and I'll try to recognize you, and make sure you turn your mic on as you have those questions, please.
If we could try and proceed through the presentation, and certainly we'll answer any questions, but it does have a flow to it, and I know there will be questions. Okay, so welcome. This is a relatively long presentation, as I just indicated to Mr. Woods. I won't be reading many of the slides. A lot of the information is not new and has been presented to the board through various presentations publicly. Following my presentation, depending on the timing, we will welcome Grimm & Parker to present the second part of our current plan. As I said, I won't read many slides, but I do want to read a statement at the beginning. When I became superintendent 7 years ago, I adopted a mantra in which my decisions would be based on doing what is best for kids. I still believe that to this day, but must add that a budget must support everything you want to accomplish. We've had a number of feedback sessions and additional options for people to weigh in on the options being considered that will ultimately lead to the board's decision. Much of that feedback has included, and I'm summarizing now, money should not be a factor in planning the best education for our children, and I do agree. However, I must work within the administrative team, teachers, and stakeholders to present options that continually improve and enhance our students' educational experience, and I must do it within the allotment that we are given. Change is never easy, but I think you will see that we have considered many, many factors when presenting the recommendations tonight, and it is because we care so much about our children that we do so. This is not easy work, but we do it because we believe in what's best for kids. So our objective this evening is to provide an analysis and a recommendation of the facility utilization and grade band options for Garrett County Public Schools, Southern End Elementary, Middle, and High School, considering with respect to the renovation of the Southern Middle School facility. And we will include background information, the perfect storm information, summary of facilities, grade band options, and the superintendent's recommendation for the grade band alignment. Okay, so on your screen, you will see some background information from 2013. I'd like to go back just a little bit further than that. In the late 80s, Northern Garrett High School was fully renovated. Southern Garrett followed in the early 90s, and we were on a very predictable cycle at that time. The last brand new building opened in February of 1998. I was a second grade teacher then, and it brought together the schools of Laughlin and Red House to make Yoklades. That was 25 years ago. General guidelines from the IAC look at the useful life of a school as about 40 years. This means that even our newest school in the system is already halfway towards that useful life. Our newest school that received a complete renovation was Northern Middle School, which occurred in 2008. That means for 14 years, the students who attended there have not had a similar upgraded, the students who would have attended Southern Middle have not had a similar upgraded facility in which to learn. We are currently enclosing the open space classrooms of Grantsville Elementary, but that school is not receiving a complete renovation. Broadford is the smaller by square footage of the two schools. In order for Broadford to be utilized instead of Southern Middle, an addition of 17,000 square feet would be necessary. And that does not include any partnership spaces for Head Start, which we will outline this evening. That is why we were looking to upgrade Southern Middle, who has undergone several modernizations in the last several years. Okay, this was in the paper, and so I'm going to just reiterate it, hit the highlights. In an early meeting to this Board of Education, I did talk about the perfect storm coming together. And unfortunately, that is what we are facing. Between the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Act, the declining enrollment that we have been experiencing for many years, the revenue and budget continually being squeezed, and the state capital program having undergone revolutionary change with the adoption of the Built to Learn Act, these four factors, you'll see the definition of a perfect storm, a particularly bad or critical state of affairs arising from a number of negative or unpredictable factors. And that is what we are facing in the next several years. Okay. I will briefly go over the blueprint and how it will affect Garrett County Public Schools. Regardless of the decision regarding grade band alignment, every school in every district in the state of Maryland will experience the greatest reform that we have seen in many, many years. My daughter graduated from Southern Garrett High School in 2016, and in just those last 6 years, many changes have already been occurring that have been significant. This will be nothing compared to the next 6 years. We all went to school, so we have ideas about how our children should be taught. The original work of the Kirwan Commission that became the Blueprint for Maryland's Future will make the educational plans for our students completely different than they are today. That is very important to remember as we talk about excellence for our students. There are the 5 pillars of the blueprint require programmatic changes, and you can see them summarized there. The 5 pillars being college and career readiness, early childhood, teacher leader, fiscal requirements, resources for student success, and of course, governance and accountability. The one that really will begin to have the most significant impact the fastest is the middle perfect storm, and that is the teacher leader requirements. The salary information that we will be required is very significant and will have a very big impact on how we budget over the next several years. In FY23, we had a mandated increase of $10,000 per teacher who held national board certification. Now, right now, that number is relatively few, at 3 for about $30,000. Next year, we estimate that will go up to about 9 for an impact of $90,000. Currently, there are no schools designated in Garrett County as low-performing schools, which is great news. But if there is a national board certification teacher that decides to go to a low-performing school, should we have one, they will receive an additional $7,000. So, and it is cumulative, which I'll talk about when we get down to the bottom. Other salaries that are required by the blueprint in FY24, it is mandated between 2019 and 7/1 of 23 that teachers receive a 10% salary increase. By 25, a mandated shift to the current scales of career ladders that will require a framework of staffing, new salary scales, new job descriptions, and perhaps anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 increase per teaching position. By FY 2027, mandated starting salaries for teachers in the state of Maryland must be $60,000. This is not a Garrett County requirement. This is a state requirement. These estimated increase to the operating budget equal about $4 million over the next 4 years. But that does not include, that's just to meet the blueprint. That does not include any steps or contractual obligations that we may have for our current employees. If other groups are included, that's such as support staff, administrators, that would go up to an additional $2.8 million over the next 4 years. And as I said in my opening statement, we must work within these factors as we are developing our budget. We are already finding it quite difficult to find and keep only the very best employees to work with our children. These dollar figures are also cumulative, meaning if a teacher is nationally board certified, they receive the additional $10,000. If they work in a low-performing school, an additional $7,000, even if that school is no longer designated as a low-performing school. As long as they stay there, they will earn that $7,000 extra. If they move to the new career ladder scale, they may earn as much as $15,000 more per year, depending on how that all shakes out. Right now, this is very difficult to predict the total impact, but it won't take long when the sample teacher is earning $32,000 more than they did in 2022. And again, these are Maryland requirements, not Garrett County Public School requirements. And they are all part of the perfect storm. The declining student enrollment has been a very difficult factor in planning for us for the last several years. We have gone through a pandemic that did not help, but we certainly were experiencing historical trends in reduction in enrollments way before that. You can see we have experienced system-wide decline from September 2013 to September 2021. We were down 495 students, or 13.1%. Since 2013, all schools have experienced a decline, but specifically the schools that we're discussing tonight, Broadford Elementary is down 149 students, or 24%. Southern Middle down 22 or 4%, and Southern High School down 118 or 16%. We're also graduating more students than we are enrolling in kindergarten. You can see by those last bullets. When the facilities plan that we'll talk about a little bit later was developed and we were consolidating schools, Broadford did absorb Bloomington and Kitzmiller students. Some were from Dennett Road were moved to different schools. But the reason that Broadford was able to take those students was because the predicted enrollment was predicted to decline. And that is what happened, as you can see at Broadford Elementary School. Projections, unfortunately, from the Maryland Department of Planning indicate further decline in the coming years of 22 through 28. My staff has presented this periodic updates to the board with enrollment declines. When you access this presentation, we presented them in 2020, 2021, and then again, June 14th of 2022. And you can see that these enrollment declines are significant and they are driving our revenue each year. And you can see the Maryland Department drivers there on the side of the chart that we presented. As far as revenue and budget, the leading drivers for Garrett County Public School operating budget has been student enrollment and local wealth. Those are the parameters within which we must continue to work. As student enrollment declines and our wealth increases, the revenue will likely to become flat to declining. And in flat to declining, that presents challenges like high inflation rates that we find, full implementation of the blueprint, and then the funding cliff in fiscal 25, when all of the federal funding will no longer be available that has been available through the COVID recovery funds. Those will run out in 2025. You can see from a previous presentation the variables in revenue projections. They do fluctuate, but in many, many years, we have been experiencing decline, and there's a number of reasons, and that's how we work with the Maryland Department of Planning to ensure that we kind of have a good estimate of what those numbers will be. There we go. Okay, another issue has been the change at the state level with the Built to Learn Act. The Built to Learn Act was enacted in 2020, became effective February 12th of 2021, and it allowed the Maryland Stadium Authority to issue up to $2.2 billion in revenue bonds for school construction, and also provides for the management of projects. It created a public school facilities fund. It made design funding eligible for state participation, which was good. It extended the assessment and funding work group to December 22, and extended the Healthy School Facilities Fund. The most significant change for Garrett County is the language in the act that allows the state cost share percentage to equal that of our neighboring county to the east. That's the 90-10 that you frequently hear about, that we are able to use Allegheny County's number, which is right now 90-10 cost share. For many years, as I talked about the previous years, while we were in a cycle of predictability of renovating our buildings, when we got to the 50-50 split, it made it much more difficult for our county government to pay for our capital projects, and made it much more difficult for us to get those funded. Now that we're at 90-10, we want to take advantage of every dollar that we can of this, this very fortunate cost share that we are now experiencing. This slide talks about the State Capital Program, and that's the Interagency Commission on School Construction, the IAC. If you've watched any presentations of this board, to this board in the last year and a half, you've probably heard a lot about the IAC, and our friends from Grimm and Parker will be talking about them as well later in their presentation. But one thing that is different than in years past is that we have developed, not that we didn't have a good working relationship before, but we have developed an excellent working relationship with the leaders at the IAC. Two senior leaders have visited Garrett County Public Schools. They made 2 visits, and they visited every single facility in Garrett County Public Schools. They know them inside and out. They've worked very well with Mr. Wazlowski as well, and they know we need to strike while the iron's hot, and we've got this very favorable cost share. But they also know that our funding continues to decline along with our enrollment. The State Capital Program for the Interagency Commission, the funding factors that are used in determining state funding and the Built to Learn program, you can see there is a formula used for new, replacement, and renovation projects. And that includes the square footage, the cost per square foot, the state cost share, and then the IAC determined building construction. And you can see the eligibility is up in the left-hand corner of the certain things it must have to meet the requirements for funding. Okay, the State Capital Program, again, the IAC determines eligible enrollment projects at each school based on projected enrollment at the designated school and the capacity of adjacent schools. So when we talk about changes from the IAC, that is a change. They didn't, when we were getting projects approved before, they didn't talk about the capacity at adjacent schools, and it has been a major factor in our eligibility moving forward. And you can see there are some baselines. They also do allow additional square footage for things like special education classrooms, for least restrictive environments, for students in 9 through 12 who are in certain career and technology programs as well. And then I know it's kind of small on the screen, but you can see some baselines and how projects are eligible and how they do those projections. The cost per square foot is established by the IAC in July of each calendar year in which the applications are submitted, and it is multiplied by the statewide cost per share foot school building cost. It is based on bids received for new school construction in the prior year, cost information derived from industry resources, and adjustments made by the IAC that reflect different market conditions, such as right now, the ability to get materials would be one, I'm sure. This is the final slide on the interagency for school construction, but you can see there that school facility attributes and their condition affect our ability for teachers to teach and students to learn. Facilities play a supporting role when they are safe, healthy, and educationally sufficient, and when the environment complements learning. Currently, there are factors at both Southern Middle School and Broadford Elementary that are not conducive to optimal learning environments. Open space instructional spaces, and aging infrastructure, and aging building systems. We have custodians that take excellent care of our buildings. They absolutely, each one of them puts a lot of work and effort into the school buildings. But like anything, it does have a useful life, and they will not last forever without upgrades to business or to building systems. Okay. This slide is interesting. I guess it still does talk about the interagency for school construction a little bit, but if you look at this slide, when we started planning to hopefully get Southern Middle School renovated, the cost per square foot was approximately $215. In the last 8 years, it has risen to in the last 9 years, to $358, which is a 66% increase. The 2013 estimate, based on today, we would have been able to renovate the building for $21.9 million, and now we're at $36.5 million. This slide is very important. You can see a 66% increase. However, we want to take advantage, as I said, you see the very last bullet, of the favorable cost share that exists that we have now. I don't know, maybe Grimm and Parker can help us when prices may go down again, but I don't look for it to be anytime soon, and we need to strike while the iron is hot while we have this favorable split. Okay, why, again, do we talk about facility utilization? It is unlikely, given the requirements of the IAC, that Broadford would be approved for any renovation or modernization. If it were approved, the school would be 56 years old and would require upgrades to mechanical systems and the roof before 2032. You can see that Broadford was built in 1976, and largely original building systems still exist, and it continues to be an open space building. Southern High School, built in 1952, did receive that full modernization I talked about in 1991, but currently does not have full air conditioning and is way under capacity at 43.2%. This data point makes funding participation by the state limited due to the gross area baselines as outlined in the previous slides for the IAC. Makes it very difficult for them to be able to justify when the buildings aren't fully utilized. This next slide I'm not even going to spend much time on. If you pull up this presentation from Board Docs or from our website after the board meeting, you can click on any one of these various reports that have been presented to the board. 2018, we began the RISE strategic plan, and then we did hire a consultant to do the strategic facilities plan in 2019. That was Dr. David Lever. And then we did have a 5-year strategic plan approved by this board in August of 2020. And all of those documents are available for your review. Okay. As I stated earlier, we have done a lot of work with Dr. Lever. He is an expert and was at the State Department in the area of school construction. Early on, the board did ask for various options to be considered, and when we brought Dr. Lever back to do a preliminary feasibility study, he did identify the problems, the options, and he did also make some recommendations. So the 5-year strategic plan included a planning initiative, number 3, that included the renovation of Southern Middle, Broadford, or both. The board requested analysis of renovating 2 facilities separately and combined. And Educational Facilities Planning did this work with beginning in December 14th of 2021 was when he presented these options. Okay, so he outlined some general considerations with some various options on repurposing central office, demolishing various schools. Renovation is usually favored over replacement due to costs. But he also identified several options that the board wanted to consider, the first being modernizing both schools. That is listed here as option A. And again, it's a little difficult, I think, to see on the screen, but these can all be accessed in any of the documents. If you look at the next slide, still talking about option A, modernizing both schools. Then option B was a pre-K to 6 elementary school and moving 7th to 8th grade to the high school. Broadford would move to Southern Middle School and become pre-K to 6. Grade 7th and 8th would move to Southern High School, and the existing Broadford Elementary would be demolished. And as Grimm and Parker are giving their presentation later this evening, you can see how we would like to use the area should the board decide to adopt the recommendation to realign the grade bands for Broadford and Southern Middle School. When you look at option B for pre-K to 6, you can see some initial figures that Dr. Lever presented. And then on this same slide, option C that the board was asked to consider was a pre-K to 8 under one roof. That would still be perhaps demolishing Broadford Elementary School and moving Southern Middle School to house a pre-K through 8 model. And you can see, again, it's very difficult to see it on the screen, but he did outline pros and cons for each one of the options, and we will actually analyze those for you in greater detail as we move through. Option C, also with pre-K to 8 under one roof, we would be combining both facilities, of course. Separate pre-K to 5 and 6 to 8, similar to how they're separated now, under one roof. But then you can also see on this slide other options that could be considered, that we have considered in our recommendation, and that is where the Regional Special Education Center would go, and community use spaces, which, again, Grimm and Parker will our friends from Grimm and Parker will outline that later on in their presentation as well. All right, so as I stated in the very first slide, unfortunately, when we're looking at any option, we must, of course, look at cost. And if you look on this slide, this is still from Dr. Lever's presentation. Option A, to modernize both schools. Option B, for pre-K to 6, 7 to 8. And option C, for pre-K to 8 under one roof, demolishing Broadford Elementary School, etc. You can see that option A, total funding in the area of $102 million. And you can see what state and local share that would include. So option A has been less, we haven't considered both schools because we're still working on renovating one, and it is unlikely that we would be approved to for funding for both schools. It looks like one of the other issues for just renovating both schools or modernizing both schools does not address at all the undercapacity at Southern Garrett High School that we are experiencing now and will be experiencing in the next several years as well. This particular slide does include Northern High School and Northern Middle School in the information, but they are not being considered at all for any changes at this time. It's so hot, my glasses are starting to come off my face.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm glad you put in the $1 million for Broadford demolition, but where did you come up with that number? Just out of curiosity.
That number was actually provided by Dr. Lever in his facility presentation, but I think when we get to Dave and Laura's presentation, they have a much more updated number that they will provide that is a much closer estimate, I think.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. All right, so if you look at this slide, and again, this is the last slide from Dr. Lever's presentation, but this is an excellent slide in looking at some of cost reduction measures that this board can consider as far as the overall scope, certainly reducing the total square footage if we realign the grade bands. Use a limited renovation, which is what we would look at for Southern Middle School, although you'll see it's a very nice renovation. One of the things that costs a lot of money and is much more disruptive to the educational process is to avoid phasing. This would mean if we did decide to do both Broadford, if we could afford to do both Broadford and Southern Middle School, we have a plan for where all of those students would go during the construction of the Southern Middle facility, but we don't have anywhere to put the students from Broadford Elementary School should we want to renovate both of them. So we would have to use some sort of a phased approach, which is more expensive and certainly does interrupt the educational process. You can see here Dr. Lever outlined that early bidding and the timing of the process is very important, so you can get those prices locked in, get those documents, get the A&E ready, and ensure that we are taking advantage of all of that 90-10 split. And then you can see in the corner in the right-hand side his recommendation of a tentative schedule for option B, which was his recommendation at the time of pre-K to 6 and 7 to 8 moving to Southern Garrett High School. So we took all of that information that I just presented from the IAC and all of the information that we received from a renowned, really expert in Dr. Lever, and we started the work at the central office with my team in preparing with Grimm and Parker on our recommendation and our option. So we took all of that information and put it together in the next set of slides. Okay. At the same time that Grimm and Parker was working on at the same time that Dr. Lever was working on his preliminary feasibility study, and then as we transition to the work that you will see tonight, we continued to work internally and with stakeholder groups on analyzing all of the grade band options. Dr. Lever focused on the facility utilization, the capital investment, and potential funding. I worked with my team to analyze all of the opportunities and impact for change that the grade band alignments would have in the following areas with respect to programming and the operating budget. Legislative mandates in the Blueprint for Maryland Future, which I mentioned, special education services for students birth to 21, student services including mental health services, behavior intervention, and student health needs, and school system support services, and that consists of facilities, safety, security, transportation, food, nutrition, human resources, and finance. And there are opportunities and challenges for students, staff, and stakeholders with each of the options. But we did some internal work, a lot of internal work, in looking at these grade band options. In coming to the recommendation that you see before you. The recommendation being Southern Middle School facilities should be modernized to become pre-kindergarten through 6th grade. Southern High School would become 7th to 12th. Broadford Elementary would be demolished. The Broadford community would move to a modernized Southern Middle School facility. The current Broadford building would be demolished to accommodate traffic patterns, community open space areas, and parking. Spaces would be renovated to accommodate early childhood services, behavior intervention, and special education as outlined in the blueprint. And upon completion, the sixth graders would remain in their home schools for all of the Southern elementary schools, which you'll see in a subsequent slide. Southern High School and its grounds would receive necessary modernizations to accommodate 7th and 8th grade students, and limited renovations would include alterations to current instructional spaces and, again, traffic patterns, parking lot changes, etc. And you can see that the original presentation from February did have a larger presentation that included other schools in the school system. Tonight, and as we move forward to the board either accepting the recommendation at our next meeting, we have just included the changes that would occur at Southern High School, and then Broadford becoming the new Southern Area Elementary School. And as I stated in the initial statement, this decision is not one that came lightly, and this is not one that was an easy one to make. But while we were continuing all of our work, our instructional teams were facilitating brainstorming sessions on each of the grade band alignment options. In addition to the EdSpec work that was happening, we also approached the entire recommendation with expert teams that included principals, supervisors, teachers, and brainstorming sessions included questions such as what special instructional needs must be considered? Which grade levels benefit most by departmentalizing instruction? How can the instructional program for all grades pre through 6 be enhanced? And then other groups were considering the grade band 7 through 12 and the impact that that would have on Southern High School. Going to go one of these times. There we go. All right, so you'll see again, I'm not going to read the recommendation again, but as I said earlier, we did look at all of the grade band options in respect to several different areas, and came to the conclusion that Dr. Lever's recommendation would become our recommendation, and it was the best opportunity for Garrett County Public School students, staff, and stakeholders. And you'll see that where we've divided it into the legislative requirements, opportunities for staff, operating budget sustainability, the capital investment, and the alignment to the Board of Education mission, goals, and prioritization of projects. And you'll see a note at the bottom that we have included on these last slides, and that is at no time this action has not been taken yet by the Board of Education. All capital projects must be approved by the funding authority of the Maryland State Agency of Commission of School Construction, the IAC, and our local government. So this is truly the recommendation phase. And the Board of Education, after hearing Grumman Parker, will have a month, now a little longer than a month, to consider the recommendation, ask questions, ask for revisions before making the final before accepting the final recommendation. So, justification A, legislative mandates for early childhood, and adopting this model enables the implementation of early childhood programs seamlessly under one facility and in a more timely manner. Head Start can move out of this current facility sooner, creating opportunity for those students and families who urgently need support. The budget consistency and timeliness of the newly modernized spaces this model offers is favorable to recruiting and maintaining a high-quality workforce. This is the only option that allows Southern Garrett High School to add opportunities for our students. The other models would force additional staffing cuts, and this is the best model for 7th and 8th grade students who are on an accelerated path as outlined in the blueprint. Resources to ensure that all students are successful. There will be fewer transitions, and this is conducive to special populations such as special education students, students who receive free and reduced meals, and English language students. And then finally, in governance and accountability, with the projected resources, this model sets Garrett County Public Schools up to implement the blueprint requirements effectively and efficiently in a timely manner, with possibly fewer reallocations necessary from current budgeted items. So basically what that last one says is we would be able to keep our current staff, and we would still be able to meet all of the blueprint requirements without having to reduce anything else, we hope, in the budget that we currently have. This recommendation is the most beneficial, we feel, for opportunities for students and staff. All right. Yep. Building efficiencies and having students under one roof actually provides greater flexibility in scheduling and collaboration with partner agencies and more efficient use of our system resources. I know sometimes that doesn't sound like that is the truth, but it really is. When you build efficiencies, you are able to adjust schedules and be a lot more flexible in how the space is used. This model is the most conducive for expanding the breadth of our course offerings, which we know is in the blueprint, but also very important to our families and our students. With 47% of the total Garrett County Public School student population between two facilities will allow greater flexibility with staffing to achieve more consistent class sizes, reducing the anomalies or what we call bubble classes. Special education services can be provided birth through 21. Student services such as counseling, health services, mental health, trauma would be enhanced. And I did want to talk about the last visit. We did have a team of our expert instructors visit two different schools that adopted this model. One was in Petersburg, West Virginia, and the other one was in Richland, Pennsylvania. We got some very good positive feedback about the grade bands that they had adopted, pre-K to 6, 7 through 12, and they had no regrets on their change, and based on their experience, they would recommend this particular alignment be pursued. So we did do quite a bit of homework and research when deciding on this recommendation. Justification C, we are very hopeful that this will help to sustain our operating budget. As student enrollment continues to decline, our operating budget will continue to be stretched. And efficiencies will likely result in fewer budgetary cuts in future years. That, of course, is what we hope. The total cost of ownership that you saw in some of the slides regarding the IAC, this model does decrease the Garrett County Public School facility portfolio by one facility, eliminating the most square footage of any of the models at an estimated 45,000 square feet. Safety and security, our school resource officer coverage would be enhanced. With, again, 47% of the student population between these two facilities, we can certainly gain efficiencies in our support services and direct more per pupil funding to direct instruction and services to our most needy students. Justification D, the capital investment. Of course, I've already said about the 47%. We certainly would be able to make this capital investment when you see the layout in our next presentation. I believe that this will be our most efficient use of both our state and local capital funds. It does meet or exceed the goal of taking advantage to the full extent of the current cost share formula, and provides opportunity for capital improvements at Southern Garrett High School that may not otherwise be available. When I said that we have an excellent working relationship with the IAC, they are willing to help us to renovate some areas to accommodate 7th and 8th grade and possibly get air conditioning installed at Southern High School that we have had on our capital plan for a number of years. Justification E, you will see alignment with the Board of Education mission goals and prioritization of projects. I'm not going to read the mission to you, but you can see that the goal of the Garrett County Board of Education is that students are challenged, that we foster partnerships, that students learn in a safe, secure environment, that every department will be good stewards of the system resources, and all employees will be highly qualified and effective in their jobs. And we really do feel that our recommendation of this grade band alignment meets the goals of the Garrett County Board of Education, and prioritizing the projects to modernize our highest capacity open space schools, to ensure students are provided that safe and secure learning environment, replace those building systems, improve the ability of our facility to accommodate current instructional programs and enhance them, and provide general improvements to increase efficiencies. Okay. Again, this is just an analysis of the other options because the board did ask that several options be considered. We took Dr. Lever's work and move that into an analysis of all of the options in the southern end. The first least favorable was option A, modernizing both Southern Middle School and Broadford with no grade band change. Certainly, if we had unlimited dollars, we might be recommending that we did both schools. But with the disruption to the educational process, our ability to secure state funding, this option is least favorable because it's the least likely to be approved for any state or local cost share. And you can see this is we've gone through the legislative, the opportunities for student staff. One thing that I do want to note on this slide is that the further that we spread our current staff, the less efficient they become, and they become split positions, and then it is very likely that programming at Southern High School would have to be cut to meet all of the needs of the blueprint, and we don't want to decrease programming of any kind. We've listed option C as not favorable, simply because it does not reduce our footprint. Again, we would likely be cutting programs at Southern High School. We would not be able to do the value added things that we want to add for 7th and 8th grade students who will go to Southern High School. It's not as costly as option A, but it is still much more than option B, and still would require disruption to Southern High School staff during construction that would not occur now with the option that we're considering. Because option A and option C do not address the utilization issue at Southern Garrett High School, we believe that choosing one of these two options would ultimately lead to a one high school model for Garrett County Public Schools. We're not recommending that because we have heard feedback from the community that that's not what we want. But this is an alternative to a one high school model by moving our 7th and 8th grade to the current Southern Garrett High School. This is a recommended timeline. It's outlined a little better in the next slide, but you can see this fall, should this plan be approved by the Board of Education, we would start the architectural and engineering design next summer and next spring and summer, the following summer. Then we would work on the IAC funding. Then we would ensure that we're renovating the Southern High School spaces in 23 and 24, relocate those classrooms, and then hopefully be ready for occupancy in January of 2026. And I think it is outlined a little better in the next slide. So you can see this school year, we're hoping to get the process started with the IAC, our local government, and present all of our capital improvement plans and architectural design work. Right now, this school year, there would be no student or staff disruption whatsoever. Next school year, we would continue with the architectural design. We would begin the limited renovation of Southern High School. No student or staff disruption next school year either. School year 24 and 25, construction on the Southern Middle School facility begins, and in that year, the 7th and 8th grade students would begin attending Southern Garrett High School. Our 6th grade students from Crellin, Yocklades, and Broadford would attend Broadford altogether. Portables may or may not be required based on the utilization at that time, but the current projection is 147 6th grade students. And then that would be our planning time for a permanent solution for our 6th grade students at Crellin and Yocklades. Do we need to renovate additional space at Crellin? Do we need to purchase a portable for 6th grade at Crellin? Is there enough space at Yocklade to accommodate the 6th grade? Now, you'll see that I have not included Swan Meadow School because their current grade band alignment does extend to 8th grade. So their 6th grade students would not go to Broadford. They would stay with the current grade band alignment of K to 8. School year 25-26, the construction on Southern Middle would be continuing and hopefully completed. Then in the following school year, 26-27, pre-K to 6th grade students would occupy the newly modernized facility. Yocklade Special Education Center would then shift to the modern facility at the new Broadford Southern Middle. Yoklade students, 6th grade, would remain at Yoklades. Crellin 6th graders may or may not remain at Crellin. Further analysis of space and option is required, and you can see I said analysis of that will occur in 24-25. And this is the last slide. I know you were looking at time. So next steps. August 23rd, there will be a public meeting at Southern Middle School at 6 p.m. That is to clarify any questions we received this evening, allow an additional session for public feedback. Then this does list the board meeting on September 13th, 2022. That board meeting is now moved to the 19th? September 19th. At that time, we will seek board action on the recommendation for the modernized plan for the Southern Middle School facility, presentation of the capital improvement plan, and we would make any adjustments between now and then based on feedback this evening and on the 23rd. Then in October, pending board approval, the CIP would be submitted to the state and the county for approval. And as I stated at the very beginning, I know I went through a number of slides rather quickly, but as I stated at the beginning, education looks very different now, and it will continue to look very different as we move through all of the requirements for the blueprint for Maryland's future. It may be unrecognizable to many of us who have been here, like me, for a very long time. This plan is forward-thinking, and I do believe, truly believe, that it gives us the greatest opportunity to get a new, modernized facility for our youngest students in the southern end of the county. And now I can take questions. And thank you so much for allowing the presentation to continue.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Baker. We'll now entertain the questions from the board. So who wants to start first? Monica?
Okay, let's see. Just give
And I
me
can
1
go
minute.
back if you tell me. I can go back if you tell me which slide we're going to go to.
Okay, when you look at page 6, accelerated pathway, middle school students, so what would that be, what grade level? Are we talking 7th grade now? 7th up through 12th?
Okay.
College and career readiness. Because currently our middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay, I'm going to have to concentrate on the page, on the question, and not necessarily the page number, because I can't
okay.
find what you, give me the question again.
It says college and career readiness, CCR.
Oh,
Accelerated pathway for middle school students. Currently, our middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th. With this, are you referring to 7th through 12th? Adding 7th and 8th into that?
yes, yes. Accelerating the pathway for 7th and 8th grade students, and as you're aware, that the CCR pathways have to be determined. So it might not impact 11th and 12th grade because they need to be determined before then, but we can certainly work with our younger students to ensure that they are college and career ready before they start the 9th grade, or earlier in the 9th or 10th grade than they may have been if they were still at the middle school.
Okay. On there, I know we talked a little bit about it. It says early childhood requires expanded opportunities for income-eligible 3-year-old children. So the state of Maryland is requiring, it's by law that we offer services in our school system for 3-year-olds?
Yes, we are actually, we are already planning to enhance the 3-year-old program this year. We will be adding 2 3-year-old classrooms, one in the northern end and one in the southern end. So yes, they're requiring enhanced opportunities for early childhood all around, not just 3-year-old classrooms. Other enhancements as well. However, many of them we have already implemented in Garrett County, such as full day expanded opportunities.
So those classrooms are ones that we currently have pre-K, and we're not adding additional classrooms, correct? Are we adding additional classrooms inside our pre-K? The amount that
2
we have?
additional 3-year-old classrooms, yes.
Okay, so we'll keep the same amount of pre-K
We will,
classes?
yes, I'm sorry. We will keep
That's-
the same number of 4-year-old classrooms, yes.
Okay, that was my question.
And that also expands our partnership with our Head Start and Judy Centers as well.
Okay. Okay, on page 9, under your funding cliff there, I have written down, in fiscal year 2025, federal COVID funding, recovery funding will no longer be available. So will there be programs that we will have to possibly eliminate or get rid of or try to fit in the budget?
Right, like most school districts and many other, I know, other county agencies, there was a significant amount of funding available for COVID relief and for reopening plans. We've used that funding to enhance as many areas as we can, but we will experience, those funds will run out in '25. So we have to start planning for their elimination now so that we don't have to build everything back into the budget after 2025.
So is this more money that was used for people, not so much curriculum or materials or supplies, would you say, or a variety?
We have used it for additional staffing, for intervention teachers, for lead teachers, and they are aware
Okay.
that funding is not permanent funding, that we're hopeful that we will be able to continue a number of those programs, especially if we're able to gain some efficiencies, but we do know that the funding will run out.
Okay. On there, it says it's special education. Students receiving special education services is down 5.6%, or 19 students. So my question, has anything changed to the program, like the state, for
special education?
yes, like the way the program is set up that
No,
maybe
I
students
wouldn't
that-
say it's the way the program is set up. I would say because we've had a declining overall enrollment, we've also had a declining student special education population as well.
Okay. I just want to make sure it wasn't something the state had
No,
changed.
no, I don't think it's anything significant that we've changed or that the state has changed
Okay.
at this time.
Okay, on page 13, State Capital Program, Intricacy Commission on School Construction. It says projected enrollment at the designated school. So are we using projected enrollment from, what numbers are we using? What the state of Maryland saying? What we are estimating locally at our level? What numbers are you using for the estimation?
Well, we work together every year with the Maryland Department of Planning. The IAC, I know, works with the Maryland Department of Planning, and we work together to determine what we believe will be projected enrollments for the out years. But of course, the further you go out, the more difficult it is to predict what the projected enrollment. But they do use those numbers in planning on how large you can build a school. Obviously, we couldn't build it for, 10,000 students when we know it will be an approximate number of students that school would serve.
So is it something that if we felt that we could agree or disagree with the projected enrollment numbers? Or?
I don't know if it's a matter of agree or disagree.
No.
I think we do work together to determine what that number would be
Okay.
based on a number of factors.
And under that, you have available capacity at adjacent schools. And I remember we've talked about this before. It doesn't mean that it's X amount of miles from one school to school. Basically,
Right.
It was said like the roads, there was all these different ways that it was explained to us.
Well, especially adjacent schools was never really part of the funding package before. It was never really part of the consideration.
Okay.
But they, even in the northern end, when our schools are much further apart than they are in the southern end, they still consider those schools adjacent schools.
So it's more wordy. It's not something we're going by to make any kind of determination then, the adjacent schools.
Right. Like between, let's say, Accident and Friendsville, they would be adjacent because there's not 2 or 3 schools in between those two. Those two would be adjacent, I believe.
Okay. On page 15, it says, currently there are factors at both Southern Middle and Broadford Elementary that are not conducive to an optimal learning environment. And it has listed under there, open space instructional spaces, aging infrastructure, aging building systems. But don't we also have other schools in the county that would fit under this category also, correct? Not just Southern Middle and Bradford?
Absolutely, yes, yes. I think they use a determination of sufficient. As I've said 100 times, our teachers, our employees, everybody works incredibly hard. And I do believe that they work to provide absolute optimal educational experience that they can. But, if even in your own home, if you don't provide upgrades, they do become aging systems. And unfortunately, a lot of our schools are experiencing that.
Okay, on page 17, Bradford Elementary, it says the current utilization is 76.3%. Prior to that, it says Bradford utilizes an 8-classroom modular, adding 200 seats to capacity. So that is included in the capacity with the portables? Because I thought at one time it wasn't part of our state-rated capacity, but it is. Is that correct?
I don't believe that it's in the state-rated capacity, but I do believe that you can use those numbers to include the full utilization of the building.
Mr. Weslowski,
I was going to say, I think I want to defer on that one.
Portables are not included in the
State-rated capacity.
for the IAC when you do that.
Right, but we,
Numbers reflected with the 200 seats included.
right, so we're including that in how this building is utilized, but it's not included in state-rated capacity numbers.
Okay, so that's more utilization,
Yes,
including the portables on it.
correct.
Okay, well then when I looked at page 19, this is what I'm trying to understand. It says the problem, Bradford Elementary School, overutilized. 8 modular classrooms installed in 2015. Projected 2025, 2026 utilization will be at 111% capacity. So I guess my question is, we've heard it over and over, we have declining enrollment, which means less students. So how can we go from 76.3% of Bradford on page 17, saying that we're estimating in the year 2025, 2026, it'll be at 100% 11 state-rated capacity?
Right, well, and this was a slide from Dr. Lever, okay? I believe he was using the overutilized because the 8 modular classrooms, as we just said, were not included in the state-rated capacity, which would put them, if you don't include them, at 111%.
Okay.
But this is projected through 25, 26, and we have, lost enrollment there even since this presentation by Dr. Lever.
Okay, so that's not so much putting other students in there, it's
Yeah.
probably having the portable not included in it.
Right.
Okay. If anybody else has any questions, you can interrupt at any time.
I have one, sorry. Thanks, Monica.
Go ahead, Jason.
Page 30, you talked about some of the benefits that we may see by approving this, but it really doesn't get into what additional features we may be able to offer our students or programs we're able to offer our students, whether it be an additional foreign language at the high school, anything like that. And I know it's hard to predict the future, but can you and the staff get a little bit more granular as far as the benefits of this grade band realignment?
Yes, I think that we do need to include that because I do see a number of educational opportunities, not just that we've said to meet the minimum requirements of the blueprint, but also ways that we can certainly enhance the 7th and 8th grade experience, as I said to Mrs. Rinker, prepare our students. So if I don't want to give this presentation again in September, but if I certainly include several slides with what those enhanced opportunities would be, that'd be. Mr. Green, will you write that down for me, please?
Do you have more you want to ask?
You defer back to Mrs. Rinker?
Go ahead,
Okay.
go ahead, Monica.
I had the same question, and it would be good if we could have that at our August.
Yeah.
But also, if there's any programs that we currently have that we will be losing, I think that is just as important, whether it be something mandated from the
Right.
blueprint or.
Right. Well, as I said in several slides, but you're absolutely right. We're very hopeful that by gaining efficiencies, by reducing our footprint by gaining efficiencies in our health services, our behavioral services, that we would not need to make any programming cuts. However, if we're not able to do that, I do anticipate that we would have to make some programming cuts. I don't have those listed, and we could certainly explore what those might be, but it is certainly pretty far out. But my goal is, if we are able to adopt this, that we would not have to make programming cuts.
Okay. We look at page 26. It says legislative mandates of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Act. Are they currently still working on that? We don't have all of our mandates. Is that accurate to say?
Where?
For the blueprint.
Okay.
It says legislative mandates on page 26.
Oh, okay.
Your first.
The first bullet.
Yes.
Legislative mandates.
Is that accurate to say they're still working on the Maryland blueprint on some things that we don't?
Well, I wouldn't say the legislative mandates. The expert review teams and the AIB have started meeting. And they've started meeting with the expert review teams. I don't believe that we would still be analyzing legislative mandates. I don't think that they will be making any changes to the timeline or the requirements
Okay.
that have been included in the pillars.
Okay. So to piggyback on Jason's question, I guess you could kind of base it off on part of this, because it says, Ms. Baker and her team analyzed opportunities and impacts the change in grade band alignment would have on the following areas. So that would be good if you could give us more explanation in those areas, how it would change or what would occur.
Yeah, improving and enhancing mental health needs, behavior intervention, student health needs, improving services, birth to 21. But we can get a little, as both of you have suggested, get a little more granular based on this slide and include what those and some more enhancements that would be.
And also with that, if there would be an addition in cost for the budget, that would be good too, an estimate if.
Okay. Well, you know what, I can do that. One of, as this slide that I included that you didn't receive in advance, that really outlined the teacher leader section, that is going to have a significant cost. But we can do some other cost estimates for the other 5 pillars as well.
Okay.
Because there are costs.
Rodney, do you have any questions? Give Monica a break there for a second.
I have a comment.
Okay.
A lot of these legislative mandates that the blueprint has put in place it looks to me, are unfunded to Garrett County. And so you've got to come up with $6.5 million in the next 6 or 7 years, and yet we're getting less money than we did the year before, despite the fact that there's billions and billions of dollars in this blueprint funding at the state.
Yes.
So I think we have a lot of work to do at the state to try to leverage more of that money for programming in Garrett County. Because this is really important, this work the grade band realignment and that type of thing will help with that, but it's not going to solve everything. And especially, you have to come up with a way to cover those costs. And
Yes.
I'm really worried about it.
Oh, that's why my opening statement was that we have to work within what we have. We can certainly continue to advocate, but I did ask Mrs. Schweitzer to clearly define our declining enrollment. It hurts us in so many different areas, in so many different funding sources, because even though the foundation funding was increased for the blueprint, it's still based on a per pupil allocation.
Right.
And so they're multiplying it by a higher number, but we have a lower number as our multiplier because of our student enrollment. So it affects so many different areas, capital projects, and many of the things that we're able to do.
Well, I'm hoping if we can provide enhanced opportunities for students, those type things, maybe we can reverse this homeschooling issue
Yeah.
that we have. Bring some of those kids back into our system.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Paul, do you have any questions that you want to ask? Okay, back to you, Ms. Rinker.
Thank you.
On page 27, it's your recommendation for Southern Middle School modernization. It says on there, the current Broadford Elementary building would be demolished. And I believe I remember before when Bloomington, when you no longer have students in a school, you have to, it goes back to the county government, correct?
In the case of Bloomington, I wasn't superintendent then, but from what I remember, yes, when we closed Bloomington School, it reverted back to the county. I believe they gave it, or somehow the town bought it, and they decided to level it. Now, for this, what we would request would be just a little bit different in this particular case, because when you look at the renderings and when you hear the presentation that will be coming up soon by Dave and Laura, you will see that many of the enhancements that we want to do to the program at the new elementary school includes some of the improvements that I talked about in the slide to not only the interior spaces, but to the exterior spaces as well, in improving some of the grounds where students will play, improving some of the traffic patterns where buses will go and where staff will park, where families would park, improved community use spaces, and they've aligned those in areas that will make them more conducive to being used by the community. So our plan actually would be hoping to keep the whole space so that we can make the improvements that we've outlined in the study that you'll see pretty soon. And that's why, to Mr. Gluffeldy's question earlier, they have a better estimate on the cost to level Broadford Elementary and the improvements to the inside and also the grounds that you'll see in the renderings.
Let me follow up on that, what I said earlier. It shows in this report that there's going to be a state-county share on that. So have we confirmed that the IEC will participate in the demolition of Broadford?
No, he said no.
Well, then that figure's wrong then in the presentation, right? Because it shows a cost share, I think.
Dr. Lever's presentation, you
Right.
mean? Is that Dr. Lever's report, is that what you're referring to?
That
Well,
we're looking at right now.
one we're looking at right now, it's in this
Yeah.
report.
That was from Dr. Lever's report.
Yeah, but I think you'll see
Couple
in
years
their
ago.
presentation, it does not include a local share. It does not include a state share.
Because you need to demolish it to do the site preparation and everything for
Yes.
these outside amenities, I mean, I would certainly try to make a case with the IEC that they would participate in that.
Yes, and I think with the county as well, so
Yeah.
that we don't turn it back, because you'll see the improvements are really exciting. There's a lot of things that do need to be improved and some things that we need to make sure that we're including because it does have an additional grade level and those students have playgrounds and we want to make sure that we have the community areas as well.
Okay.
Ms. Ringer, you're on a page that I had a question, so if you
Go
don't mind,
ahead.
if I could ask. One of the, interesting in the discussion that you had with your team regarding sixth graders at Crellin and at Yacht Glades, when part of the problem is overutilization of those two schools, maybe overcapacity, how much consideration was given to making those sixth graders a part of the new school?
Well, we have considered that. But since the school would be, since the school would be pre-K to 6, all of the students in the Broadford catchment area would always go pre-K to 6. If Crellin students would only come for 6, they would be going through another transition. So what I'm saying is they would be at Crellin from K to 5, come to the new school for 6, then go to the high school. So they would be experiencing an additional transition that our team really felt like we might be better suited to in those planning years of 24, 25, looking at ways we can enhance this current space at both Yacht Glades and Crellin to allow them to become a similar grade band of up to sixth grade.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I understand that. I guess a couple of thought processes was that if you did put those students in the new school, you could build a bigger school. You get more state participation for a bigger school. In case you needed that bigger school down the road at some point in time, if there were an
Right.
influx of students, you'd have a school big enough to take care of those students.
There already is a bit of a cushion. We're able to build it a little larger than the current exact number. They do allow for some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it's a kind of a double-edged sword. You get a little bit
Correct, right.
for what you want, and you lose a little bit of it as well. But
Yeah.
I guess one of the concerns that I have is a concern of, I think it's important for us to understand a little more clearly what will be the process for ensuring those two schools have the capacity. I mean, what's
Right.
the plan? I mean, besides an analysis,
Right.
I think we need to kind of have a general understanding of how you're going to make that work as we go forward. And I'm sure you've discussed it, but I think we need to kind of hear what that plan's going to be.
Yeah. Well, we do feel that if the special education center was moved from Yoklades to the new facility, that would free up enough space at Yoklades so that they would not be over capacity. And that's why we kind of had in a couple of different places that we do need to really look a little closer at exactly what our options would be at the site of Crellin to be able to support the sixth grade to stay
I
there.
think it would be important for us to hear
Yeah.
that at the next presentation. Monica?
Yes. I had that kind of same question, not the same thing, but on this page 27, because I believe later in the slide, you said that we would visit it or look at later about the sixth grade at Crellin and Yoklades, but on page 27, it said, upon completion of construction, sixth graders would remain in their home schools for all southern elementary schools. So that's what you was referring to keep sixth grade at
Correct.
Crellin and Yoklades.
And not
Would keep
change the grade
their-
band alignment. It's One Meadow. It
Yes.
would remain at K to 8. Yes.
Okay.
And then the students at those three larger elementary schools would, again, as I said to Mr. Woods, only be experiencing that one transition from their elementary to their high school, from 6th to 7th.
Well, yeah, the big problem's Crellin. And
Sure.
you have a short-term problem where you're going to have to keep the sixth graders there while this construction goes on. And so I assume.
Well, actually, we're recommending that during the construction, that the sixth graders from both Yoklades and Crellin go to Broadford. There is space at Broadford during the construction. So
Okay,
instead
so
of those
that's
sixth
the-
graders going to Southern Middle School,
So
those
that's
six,
short-term, but then
Short term,
to
yes.
keep them.
During the construction.
I think what we're saying is that we need an outline of when we're going to start the planning process for schools like Crellin.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? Do we add modulars, or do we modernize the facility, or add more space to accommodate some of the deficiencies that we've seen at that school? But we probably need a timeline on when we're going to, and I know it's a little general here, you said
it is,
24.
yeah, it is still relatively general,
But the sooner we get started on that, the better, I think.
yeah.
And we have in there under Broadford on page 27. No, I lost it. Three-year-old pre-K classroom, but somewhere we had here about, I believe, Head Start, correct? Moving into the school.
Yes.
So would that mean that they would maybe move out of their location in another building?
Right, and you will see kind of where those classrooms would be located in the rendering of the new school. And early on in a lot of our presentations, there are parts of this plan that are contingent or at least intertwined with other parts of the plan. So yes, currently, as you are aware, this building has Head Start students in that wing. It is possible, and certainly Community Action and our friends at Head Start have expressed that they really would like to be back in our elementary schools because, again, it helps with the transition from our youngest learners to pre-K or to kindergarten. So the use of this building then may have other uses if we're able to accommodate Head Start in the new facility. And they've been a great partner, and we really do have a wonderful working relationship, and I think that would be a very favorable move. I think they would really be happy to be there.
Okay. This number is stated on page 28 and 31. On page 28, it's under D, capital investment. Most efficient use of state and local capital funds to provide the state-of-art instructional spaces for over 47% of the GCPS student population. So when you're referring to that 47% of the GCPS population, are you referring to Broadford, Southern Middle, Southern High?
Yes.
Which schools? Like I was trying to figure out
The three of those schools combined
to make two.
represent, either way. Right now, the Broadford plus Southern Middle plus Southern High School represent 46% of the student, 47% of the student population.
Okay.
It would still be 47% even if they were split into two, but right now, that number does include the student population of the three schools.
Okay. Because I have the numbers we had got just I believe last month or June. Southern High 626 students, Broadford 539, and Southern Middle 458.
Right,
So that's where you're
correct.
getting that percent.
Correct.
Okay.
You're looking, Mr. Rinker, let me ask you another question. You say school year 24-25 construction of the middle school facility begins, and you're advocating the 7th and 8th graders would begin attending Southern High School after some limited renovations a couple years before that. When you say 7th and 8th graders, are you talking about the Swan Meadow 7th and 8th graders as well?
No,
No, you're just talking about the 7th and 8th graders from Southern Middle?
yes.
Okay. It says 7.
Yeah, and I hesitated to put all because the students at Swan Meadow, that we are not recommending to realign the grade band at Swan Meadow.
Okay. Mr. Rinker, how many more? You
only
can
have
ask
like-
as many as you want, but we're at 7:37. I was just, if you've got a lot more, let's go ahead and do public comment now, and we'll come back to you.
That's fine.
Is that okay with
Yep.
you? Okay.
Thank you.
That was much better.
Mr. Green will call your name and what you'd like to speak about. And if you would come up to the desk, give us your name for the record, please. And he will be the timekeeper, and he will tell you when your 3 minutes have been exhausted.
So we have two people signed up. I've got Mrs. Linda Bradley. She's going to speak on consolidation in Swan Meadow.
Good evening. My name is Linda Bradley, and I live in McHenry. I'm concerned about the declining population in the county and in the schools specifically. And I will not state some of the specific statistics that I found from the Census Bureau and another website, just due to the time that I have. As population declines, more schools are closed. Some Garrett County mayors noted in the Glade Star June 2022 edition that there was a, quote, loss of community in their town, and that in general, school closures had a negative impact on their towns. It appears that when school-age population declines, schools close. Fewer people stay here or move here. Some parents choose to homeschool. School population decreases even more, and then we receive less money from the state, and then more schools close. More towns decline in population, and viable businesses and jobs decrease, and the cycle continues. Research shows that large consolidated schools across the country do not work well in some areas. Some districts are now deconsolidating, such as parts of Baltimore City and County. Do larger schools really save money? Where would the taxpayers in Garrett County be able to find the actual savings from closing Bloomington, Kitzmiller, and Dennett Road in the past 10 years? It has been estimated that large new schools would cost taxpayers up to 50% of the cost of the building just to maintain it. Could it be less expensive to renovate and maintain smaller community schools? Swan Meadow, for example, is a perfect example of a successful K-8 community school. Older students mentor younger ones. Families are known by all staff. Bullying incidents are few. Many parents have said that they will pull their children out of public school altogether if Swan Meadow closes. School community events such as the Fall or Harvest Festival have brought local families together for generations. According to records of the Maryland Historical Trust, Swan Meadow opened around 1890 and has been in its present building for 63 years, since 1958, so for many generations. Swan Meadow, in particular, should stay open. As the historic AME Church, now being preserved by Mountain Lake Park, is celebrating our African American history, Swan Meadow is a unique part of our county's German immigrant, Amish, and Mennonite history. Swan Meadow's population makes it one of the most effective institutions for furthering diversity and inclusion in our very homogeneous county. So please try to find an alternate solution to closing community schools, and Swan Meadow in particular, if that ever comes up. Garrett County needs their support in order to flourish in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Michael Henderson to speak on small schools. And Mr. President, if I may, anybody else that wanted to speak, you would need to come up here.
If there is anyone who would like to sign up, certainly do so immediately, and as soon as we finish with board questions, we'll invite you up to speak. Certainly feel free to do so.
Greetings, my name is Mike Henderson. No offense, please. Is this operating? Okay.
Wait, just get a little closer.
On the occasion of declining revenue, using your figures, 2019 had a budget of $53,800,000 roughly. 2020 had $56 million. 2021 had $61 million. 2022 had $66 million. You project that across 7 years into the future, money doesn't seem to be a problem, really. I have a hard time with that. If I heard correctly, it was quoted that Dr. Lieber said a new Broadford would cost $100,000. That's an extreme amount. At $425 per square foot, a 100,000 square foot building would only be $42 million. You can see that demonstrated currently under construction in Anne Arundel County at Hillsmere and Edgewater. 509 students, Edgewater right now is 38 million. Okay, I didn't mean to talk about math that way, except it needed to be brought up. What is important is we pay homage to the idea that we love small schools. We love community schools. And for the past 10 years, we've done nothing but shut them down. We have no plans to build any schools in the near future. Using the Kerwin and the blueprint for Maryland, most of our schools could be replaced for less than $2 million. Broadford would cost about $4.2 million. Southern Middle would cost less than that. Southern High School needs to be replaced. It's 65 years old. It's a cold year relic. It looks like a Potemkin village with a false front on front of an old building. It should be replaced. We are not talking about building schools. We keep talking about patching old ones. Why not new community schools? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Anyone else like to sign up before we move on to questions? Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Rinker, would you like to continue, please?
Okay, I think I asked this question in a roundabout way earlier, but here it's stated again, college and career readiness on page 29. This is the only option that allows Southern High School to add opportunities. The other models would force additional staffing cuts. This is the best model for 7th and 8th grade students on accelerated paths. So I guess that would fit in the question that Jason had asked and I had asked to tell us some of those things that
It does.
that will be added. And this goes back to what you said a little bit ago on page 29. It says under that, resources to ensure all students are successful. Fewer transitions are conducive for special populations of special education farms and English language learners. So does that mean going to 2 schools instead of 3 schools? Sort of? Like you wouldn't
I'm sorry,
be...
repeat the question, Mrs. Ring.
Fewer transitions. That means instead of doing 3 schools for your
Right,
education, it would be 2 schools, correct?
Correct.
At the southern end.
right. Right.
I guess that's my main questions for now,
All right, thank you.
because I'll wait for the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Dr. Paul? Jason?
All right, we'll get those enhancements for
Okay.
next month.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
probably just to sum it up, one of the great unknowns that we're dealing with is the fact that come November, we're going to get a new governor. We're going to get a new General Assembly. We don't know how they feel about Maryland Blueprint for the future. We hope they feel the same. But it is an unknown that certainly we're trying to navigate through as well and stay on top of it as much as we can. But we've tried. I think the superintendent and her staff have done an incredible job of at least taking what we know to be factual and trying to at least put some sort of a plan to prepare for the future. So
Thank
with
you.
that regard, I think the 5 of us are very appreciative of all the work that
Yes.
all of you have done sitting out there.
I would agree wholeheartedly. This is an incredible amount of work, and I think we did present a significant amount of information we will enhance for next meeting, but my team certainly did put a lot of effort in. There's a lot of information here, so thank you for recognizing that.
And Dr. Miller, I know if you're watching
She's
at
probably
home,
watching,
thank you for all the work that you've put into this as
probably
well.
feeding the baby.
'Cause I know Dr. Miller has put in
So
an
is probably
enormous amount
Dr.
of work in.
Mangus, too. Say
And
hello
so
to her.
is, yes, Ms. Angus as well. So thank you both. With that being said, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is the educational specifications to be presented by our architects from Grimm and Parker.
And Laura, I feel badly, I know Dave Wolf, I'd like to introduce you to the board, and Laura is... I'm Laura Smiles. Thank you, I'm so sorry. From Grimm and Parker.
What is it?
I just don't know if it's going to have feedback. Yeah. Okay, can you hear me okay? Excellent. All right, so we're delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having us. We've been through a wonderful process with Garrett County Public Schools in this great band alignment. We're kind of here to demonstrate some of the opportunities. Something happened up here. Oh, we don't have the clicker either. Anyway, first slide. We're very excited to be here to kind of demonstrate some of the opportunities and some of this excitement that can be possible with this project. So thank you so much for having us. Not only did I attend all 3 of the schools in question, but so did my children, so I'm delighted to be here. Okay, so this is our team. We are Grimm and Parker Architects. We recently celebrated 50 years anniversary, which was exciting. Paul Klee is the partner in charge. Myself, David Wolf, project manager, 15 years at Grimm and Parker, and Laura Smiles. You want to say something? Hey. Laura Smiles is the project architect and educational planner. Together we have about 60 years of experience in K-12 at Grimm and Parker Architects. We also have a consultant team, a civil engineer. They're not here today. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and also a structural engineer and a cost estimating firm to help us with that. So Grimm & Parker is, we're very proud to be ranked number 3 nationally in K-12 design. It's something we're very excited about. We have over 90 plus elementary schools, 20 plus ed specs and programs, and 50 plus high schools. So this is kind of a snapshot of where we are in the process, giving some background and some history. You can see the red arrow is the meeting here currently today. We'll talk about next steps at the end of the presentation, but we kind of wanted to overlay like where we were and how we got here. So we did a round of visioning with the community, with the staff, with the stakeholders, with teachers and students alike, and it was wonderful. We got tons of information. So in the middle of that process is where we refine and reconcile that information to provide documentation both for the educational specification and for the schematic design. So everything we've heard from the community and all those community meetings were very transparent. Everyone was invited. We also put out like a web portal so people could put online answers and responses to questions. Is reflected in the presentation you're about to see. It's not working. I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Thanks. So I'm going to make sure this works. Okay, great. So in general, when we joined the project, when we kind of became part of the team of this entire exploration, we had to get our understanding of exactly where everything would go, and this was kind of our marker of what we needed to understand. First, all the students were going to, from the elementary school, we're going to end up in the middle school, and the middle school, some of the middle school students were going to end up in the high school. So this is some of the stats on that. Everybody has sort of been reiterating them throughout the day, so we're not going to waste your time of doing that. But really, the glaring opportunity for us was that there was a ton of seats available at the high school, and then a lot of opportunities at the middle school as well, specifically with the site because it's so well sited and a really great area and has a lot of opportunity there. You want to go ahead? Oh, I have the clicker. Oh, yeah, thanks.
It's this button here.
This one? Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty nervous about it. So when we started this whole process together, we really tried to design a visioning series of exercises that would comprehensively really explore both the really good things and the challenging things that are going to happen. It does nobody any good to only explore the really only warm and fuzzy stuff. You really need to know what's in front of you before you get started. Specifically in regards to Maryland, going back to the stats that Dave's shared, we are ranked number 3 nationally in K-12, but we mostly work in Maryland. Most of our K-12 work is in Maryland. So knowing the IAC requirements, understanding all of that is extremely important to us, and kind of all the jurisdictions in Maryland. So we're really kind of working arm in arm with you guys about trying to figure out how to get there. So these visioning questions are some that we usually work with, and it's kind of talking about innovation. What are the values of these schools, particularly if there is going to be some consolidation? What are the opportunities for faculty and staff? This isn't just a place for learning; it's a place for working. How do we kind of treat our employees and treat them well? And also opportunities for the community and understanding the full scope of that. So some of the things that we did were we had kind of open sessions just like this, community meetings kind of in the evening. We also spoke directly to educators, a lot of familiar faces in this room, which I really love. It means that everybody's been showing up this whole process, which is really great. And having really good ideas. We've pointed out some of them here and we presented them before, but we just want to revisit a few of these things. Going back to Dave's point, also, we know that everybody is tapped. Not everybody has time to come to a committee meeting in the evening, so we created these Google Forms for everybody to sort of kind of create their own feedback to those same questions so we can really look at them all at the same time. And this is where some of the challenging things came up, keeping every teacher's job, job retention, making sure that we don't lose anybody, that's really important, and also making sure that all their students feel safe. There are a lot of concerns about safety and security, and we heard those and take them into account. The next thing we did is we created what we call model play. That's where we're working within the specific footprint, and we have little pieces that are the exact size of the rooms that we would be putting in, and we start to organize them together. This is mostly facilitated by your team. We're just there to sort of say, this is the outside of the building, that's the inside of the building, what are you going to put in the bag? And we learned a lot of different things about that. People naturally start to put things in the same place, maybe put them in different things, and that prompts a lot of good discussion and helps us reinforce kind of your values as we move forward through the project. And so ultimately, all those things came together to create what we call your guiding principles. Again, this is your project, your guiding principles, not ours. But one of the first things that came out of somebody's mouth when I showed up at Southern Middle was added value. How does every single part of this project from top to bottom have an added value to students, to your community, to your faculty, everyone, and we've really taken that to heart. The next would be quality of environment. How do we kind of create those environments that are energetic, inspiring, kind of growing that fire for learning that is going to inform that enrollment and grow that larger than that. Community and student support. Again, going back to kind of how are we supporting our community? Your community schools are more than just that. Every day, schools are being tapped with more and more and more to be resources to their community, and you need spaces and places to support that. Belonging and safety, this is really going back to that safety and security. Security is really more than locks and cameras, right? It's really creating a culture where everybody knows who each other are and a really safe place where everybody feels like they belong and really decreases that bullying. We recently completed a school in Baltimore, and they had a very severe suspension rate before we completed the school. And we just finished a net zero school for them, and they have had 0 suspensions this year. And that is just such a testament to kind of what quality environment can really encourage in student behavior. And the next one would be college and career readiness. I think we've kind of definitely hit the record for saying college and career readiness in any meeting I've ever been in. I'm so excited about it. But that is something that we heard loud and clear, both from, not only in the high school level, but kind of creating that spark in the elementary school and the middle school levels to be able to really emphasize that as by the time we get into high school. And the last would be collaboration. I mean, none of these things are possible if we're not collaborating, if not everybody's on the same page about how we're going to get it done. And I think that even just the process and the talking points that you guys have shared so far is really emphasizing that's something that everybody can get on board with, which is exciting. So another design consideration, we have your guiding principles, but also another design consideration is obviously the blueprint. We've talked a lot about that, obviously, so I'm not going to dig into these things, but specifically what we've talked about, what we've heard talking points about are how it relates to curriculum. What our job is to realize how that affects space. So exactly how we don't know what's going to happen next, but we don't know when your funding's going to come either, and we need to set you up with a space program that can sponsor and really respond to those programs ahead of time. So is that new pre-K spaces? Is that new Head Start spaces? Is that lab space? Is that different kind of music space to offer a dance curriculum, which might be on your radar? All of those things that we're trying to be really aware of, just a really light beach read of the blueprint, 392 pages, just throw that right in your bag, get ready to go.
I also wanted to add, we're also constantly thinking about flexibility, like the possibility for a space to easily transform into another. So you have the capacity to keep up with the blueprint as it changes.
Absolutely. Really good point. The next design consideration, again, is those IIC requirements. We take enrollment, we take capacity, and those two things are what we're on the hook for. The IIC, this is their investment. Your portfolio is their investment. That's just a reality of the situation. The relationship that we've created with IIC, and particularly with this county, is really great. It's really responsive. They totally understand. They're extremely supportive of your goals, and I think that that's going to really give us a lot of mileage as we continue through the project. So currently, the projected enrollment is 692. Student rated capacity is for 813. This is some of the EdSpec content that we are going to be preparing to put all together. Yes, go ahead.
There's a question, I think, from Ms. Rinker.
Yeah, hi.
I'm trying to understand the clarification of these numbers, like
Yes.
projected enrollment. So what, pre-K through fifth at Broad for now, I think is what we say, 539 students?
Plus a third of the Southern Middle School population.
And then, there's sometimes 150 kids a year, maybe, so, I'm just trying to think, 50 kids there. So you'd have 539 and 50. I'm just trying to figure out how we come up with that number. So then I guess you would add the number for special ed that y'all claimed.
This is the number that was provided to us by you guys, so I don't feel qualified to be the one to, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
They took it from another.
Because it looks like that there's 153, 121 that number, but some other number comes 153. So, we talk about our enrollment is declining. So that's the reason it's brought to us to eliminate one of our buildings, our footprint. So, but if we're keeping the building the same size, so then how are we going to fill with 100 and some students? When they keep saying we're having declining enrollment, I don't know why we would keep our state rated capacity if we're keeping Swan Meadow K through 8th. Crelin currently is K through 5th, but put the 8th grade there and hopefully, keep 6th grade there. Y'all Glades, allow them to have 6th grade. So I'm just trying to understand, we say declining enrollment, why would we allow for more capacity when that's the conversation here, is our buildings are too big for the amount of students we have?
I can't speak to the projected enrollment number. Do you want to speak to that?
Mike?
Oh.
We used the projected enrollments. We did provide these numbers, but I don't have the chart. Do you have the chart, Mrs. Schweitzer, that we used to provide these numbers? I don't have it in front of me. Maryland Department of Planning, right.
They include our projection of an estimate for 3-year-old pre-K spots that we potentially will have, which we have no track record on what that will actually be, so it is a complete estimate. They include also the ALO special education population from Yacht Glades.
Right.
So our 3-year-olds will be counted in that then?
For this school, yes. Not the other one.
So this is new, having 3-year-olds in our school, so they'll count in our state rated capacity then, correct? Since we are off in the program? Like we'll count,
Currently they're not counted.
okay?
Sorry, in terms of like 3-year-olds, quote unquote. The room that they go in does count for capacity because that's still in your school. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So that doesn't factor our percent of capacity. It would look like we actually have a lower number than what we do then.
So currently, the numbers that you see here are what based on utilization, like you get 100% utilization for Head Start pre-K kindergarten classrooms in class grades 1 through 5, and then your 6th grade classrooms get an 85% utilization rate because they change and they're in different places, right? So that's based on the IAC. They kind of created that utilization. So that all of that together collated is how you get to 813 for student rated capacity. So based on having 6 Head Start, and we're going to call them Head Start / pre-K classrooms.
Okay.
4 kindergarten classrooms, 4 classrooms per grade, 1 through 6, and then 6 special education classrooms, which do include the ALO classrooms and STARS classrooms and inclusion classrooms.
Okay.
Was that helpful at all?
It does. I mean, because I looked at it and I didn't wonder where we come with 100 some more kids. When we talk about enrollment declining, I didn't understand where those numbers were generated from.
I think the key point is that's agreed upon that the IOC would fund that amount.
Yes.
Right, Allison?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a key point. I think maybe you're trying to get.
Okay. Are there any more questions? That was
Thank
great.
you.
Do more of that. Okay. Okay, so another design consideration is that we're working with an existing floor plan, particularly if we're looking at renovating the middle school. There are some program spaces that would be really costly to move around. This is something that we talked to you guys about last time. So technically, are they over-programmed when you benchmark it compared to other schools of this size? Yes. But would it be fiscally responsible to move them? No. So that has to really be worked into the plan as we keep going forward. And from those things, we kind of created this design approach, this zoning approach on how we might be able to put these spaces back into the building, creating kind of an admin guidance health area, creating these academic zones, and having grade levels, kind of learning communities where they'd really be able to engage, especially since we're bringing those sixth graders in. How are we worried, like, you know, kind of about where students are going to be circulating in the building. So having the media center at this current location, that's really helping. And this has evolved more. Dave's going to talk more about the plan, but kind of understanding this zoning approach is one of the key components of the EdSpec that the IAC is going to ask for. So we're going to dig in a little bit to the program summary. I know this is a little bit in the weeds, but we just wanted to be able to give you guys some more information. So we broke them into departments: teaching and learning, kind of number of classrooms, student teacher planning spaces, collaborative learning areas. There are 3 of them, 3 per cluster. Also the sciences, 2 classrooms and 1 STEM lab, speaking exactly to what Dave was speaking about having STEM labs, science labs, kind of having dual purpose and being able to grow over time. Special education, we've talked a little bit about that so far, but you guys have the list. I really hate to be even just like reading data off of a slide, but it's worth it to share it with you guys. The next would be related arts education. So that's a visual art classroom, 1 makerspace / art classroom. So really you're getting 2 classrooms and they'd be kind of available to be makerspaces. 1 instrument vocal music room, 1 music movement room. That's something we've seen kind of in the community to be able to offer that dance curriculum, which again we might be coming. Also 1 technology education lab, which has a myriad of uses and is really meant for the whole school to be able to share. The next would be the media center, 2 instruction areas to be able to have 2 classes at one time, soft seating, collaboration area for stack space, so kind of holding your actual collection, and then actually your media special office. The next would be the physical education program. So in this program, we have 1 main gym, 1 auxiliary gym, 2 locker rooms, and storage and staff support. I do want to key in on this a little bit. There are no pre-K 6 class schools in Maryland who have a main gym and an auxiliary gym. That is a very special case. That is something that's happened because it's already existing at the existing school. So this is something that we have deliberately talked to the IAC about, that technically if you're over program in that area, yes, but it's more fiscally sound if we keep it where it is, and they are very on board with that approach. So these are the sort of things that we're starting to talk about them now, so that if we maybe have some gray areas in the square footages that they would typically fund, they're looking to make those consolidations with you guys to be able to really make this work.
Can you remember the approximate sizes of those 2 facilities, those 2 gym facilities?
I want to say, well, yeah, you might have them written down. I want to say that the main gym is 7,000 square feet.
Sounds right.
And the auxiliary gym, I think, is 2,700 square feet. And the other, no.
Less, like 1,500.
Less, 1,500 square feet. So those are, much larger than you would typically even see in an elementary school. Even with some jurisdictions choose to use their community use space and add that to the gym to be able to create kind of a competitive sized gym to be used for the community. We've reallocated that in your program, so for another purpose. So that is just a benefit that we know is existing and is important to the community. So we're not going to be able to change that. We shouldn't change it. It's something you guys need.
One of the concerns we had in renovating that building was the fact that we do lose a community use gymnasium that we wanted to keep intact as if we could. And certainly an auxiliary gym, I guess, 1,600 square feet is probably about the size of this room.
It's too small.
Yeah.
So I'm going to touch on those points specifically when we start looking at the floor plan, and you'll probably be pretty pleased.
Yeah, it would be a great room for certain things, obviously.
Wrestling.
I think we're
Wrestling
talking about the
being
program.
one, yeah.
The
A
program.
great wrestling room.
Not
But in
the-
terms of playing basketball, we'd find it not very useful.
What he's asking.
What is, okay, never mind.
Program's bigger.
Yeah, that's what I think he was asking what the program was. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next would be food services, existing platform, the dining area, and the kitchen and prep area. We've made some adjustments there. Also the community area, this includes your Judy Center, and also 2 outdoor toilet rooms. We talked a little bit about this before, but these would be only accessible from the exterior of the building, and something that if you're on site, kind of using the fields, as we know you guys do all the time, that they'd be able to have that facility already located in your perimeter of your building, which is much more economical to do and to maintain. Also the administrative suite, we've added a secure vestibule, kind of being able to pull exactly where admin is to give them a little more site security, site availability availability and, awareness of where the entry is. Also, I'm trying like really hard. This is a little harder for me. Student resource office, an admin, staff support, and one conference room. There's a lot of conference areas that have been allocated in the program, and there's some that are shared in different suites. We know conference areas is really important, specifically for those IEP meetings. So in order to maintain space, we've had to share a few of those things. Also, health services suite, one area, office treatment area, 2 restrooms, personal care suite. A personal care suite is a way that we've, in a couple of other jurisdictions, just to give you an idea of what that is. It's a very small amount of square footage. It's like 150 square feet, but it's an area that has a washer, dryer, some locker rooms, and a shower. And it's really, thank you so much, you're the best, to be able to help students who are experiencing homelessness in a really discreet way. And we know that that's really a need that is occurring, really statewide, but it's a way to, specifically Comar requires health services to offer a shower, and this is a way to meet that benefit and get funded through IAC, but also kind of expand a community support in a different way. Guidance suite, counselors, school psychologists, behavioral coach, school-based therapists, and itinerant offices. For those folks who aren't here all the time, they at least have a landing space, somewhere to be, somewhere to work together. The next would be instructional support. So this is faculty dining and lounge, and also teacher workrooms. And then finally would be building support. We're not making a huge amount of changes to the building support. There's not, because the systems in the building aren't going to really change. So that's grounds maintenance, custodial support, network support, MEP, that sort of thing. So that all comes together to a net square footage of 73,540 square feet. So that's sort of the base level numbers, and those get when you add in a couple of other of the mechanical spaces, restrooms, things like that, corridors, that's how you get to the total square footage. So what we've defined in the program is we define net, and then we have a gross number when we've decided kind of where all the corridors go and things like that. So that would be in a typical project, but we know where the things are going here. So we have a kind of a gross square footage number that we're able to share with you guys. Go for it.
Not to interrupt, but when you was on page 15, it says 40 classrooms. Are the classrooms going to be all similar, the same size, or will there be a difference in the size of them?
So the pre-K, the Head Start pre-K and kindergarten rooms, those are all 1,000 square feet and include a toilet room. The rest would be 800 square feet. And that is a benchmark with kind of other jurisdictions, but also, again, thank you for bringing that up, because the IAC specifically kind of looked at that number and said that is a really good number. That's not you're not building the Taj Mahal, you're not overreaching, but that is a good compliant number for offering instructional in that space.
Rich, what would be the like a standard size of classroom we have now, just to put it into perspective? Standard size? I mean, I know we have a variety, but some would be larger, some would be smaller, like in the medium size, would you say? How many square feet?
700?
Yeah.
I think from visual, if you maybe took half of this room, because I would say this room's very close to 1,600 square feet.
Sorry, one question about the guidance suite. Are there therapy rooms in there? Because we have outside therapists come in from the health department and everything to actually counsel the kids on addiction or a mental health treatment.
They will have offices for the people who are there full-time and single-use offices for those who come in after that. And
How many? It says itinerant offices, but don't we have
2. There's 2 itinerant
Okay,
offices.
thanks.
Sorry.
So they'd be doing the therapy in the
Yes,
in the room?
or in another shared conference space or another. There's a lot of flexibility in this plan. You'll kind of see more when you get a look at it. But this is really always hard to present the data without the visual, and I know that, so I'm very sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any more questions?
No.
Keep them coming.
I'm good.
Okay. So Dave, this is over to you.
Oh. Okay, does anyone mind if I stand for this part of the presentation and talk to the screen?
I mind. I deeply
It's very
mind.
difficult for me to do this without pointing at things. And I will tell you, I'm not good with microphones, so standing up will add another level to that, so bear with me. Okay. How's that? Close enough? Okay. So I'm going to start talking about one of the first steps in this process is going to be moving the 7th and 8th grade students to Southern High School. So that's kind of the point of this. This is the transitional slide just showing that. 7th and 8th grade program at a glance. 16 classrooms, that's 8 per grade level, 2 collaboration spaces, 2 dedicated 7th grade restrooms, 1 decentralized admin office. Then as far as special ed is concerned, 2 STARS classrooms, 4 inclusion classrooms. Can you guys see? 1 technology lab, 1 fine arts lab, and 1 makerspace. Okay, so this is taking a look kind of at both plans all at once. So what we did as part of the process is walked with Mr. Wezolowski and his team, Principal Wolf, and we walked the school to figure out what spaces were underutilized and or completely empty. And we discovered quite a few. So the colored spaces you can see on these plans identify those spaces and what we're going to be using them for. I'm going to blow them up on other slides so you can see them better. So this, if you look up here, this is the first floor. This is kind of the key plan. That's where I am in the building currently. Okay, so the gymnasium, just for points of reference, is right here. On that first floor, there are a number of spaces that are currently not being used. And we envision that the 8th grade students would have their own learning community in this general vicinity right here. So that would, what I mean by learning community is it's kind of their home. So we kind of do separate the students from the other population to some degree. We would also renovate the locker rooms. The locker rooms currently have very large lockers that we feel strongly that we can create more efficiency in that space, and then create a partition in between so we have a 7th and 8th grade locker room and a 9th through 12th grade locker room. Okay?
Yeah, let me ask you a question about that, because I made that note on mine.
Sure.
Are you saying you're eliminating all the large lockers in that, especially that boys' locker room?
No. In the team room, the lockers are roughly 4 feet by 3 feet, and they're way too big. For a team room of that size, we can minimize the size of those and fit more space in there to provide better efficiency and create a better use of that space, so we can fit more students.
Can you put a football uniform in that locker?
Yes,
that you're
we will
saying?
make sure that is the case. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
They will
All right.
fit. Right now, I think they're also about this tall because they're on pedestals, right? So if we can maybe even double stack them, that would be a solution there too.
Yeah, okay.
Something to keep thinking about, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so now we're in the key plan, kind of another section of the first floor building. So on this side would be, we noticed the science wing was oversized. The science labs are actually oversized. So for the majority of the day, those science classrooms are only occupied in half of them. The other half is a lab. So if we split those 2 classrooms in half, we can put the 8th grade science there, and we can better utilize those spaces. We have an 8th grade, we had another opportunity similarly where the JROTC is actually currently it resides in what used to be the masonry lab, and it's too big for that function. So if we separate that space into half, we can also put the 8th grade tech lab there, and that would be right across the hall from the existing tech lab, a tech ed lab, which would provide synergies between those 2 spaces.
Isn't that space that's in the old brick, block, and stone lab, as you referred to, isn't that space currently used for their rifle team?
That's correct. We would be using it both for the classroom to create more flexibility and the shooting range. So that's what happened in the same space. Currently, they have a classroom and a shooting range.
So there's enough space to do both of those, you're saying?
Through our analysis, yes.
Yeah, that's
We went out and measured it and said, you know what, this can overlap.
super.
Yeah. So then moving down towards more of the administrative areas. Am I still doing okay with the mic? Okay. We're looking at the nurse's office to move it to a better location. Currently, it's pretty tight in there. The nurse doesn't have a whole lot of space. There might be room for 1 bed. So we're moving the nurse across the hall and providing a private toilet room and also an office. And then where the nurse used to be is a prime location for better safety and security for the SRO. So we give the SRO a window into the lobby and maybe even a door so that if there is an event or a threat, the SRO can immediately run out and head them off. So for the second floor, this is more of the 7th grade academy, 7th grade learning community, and you can see the key plan. I'm right here now on the 2nd floor. So you can see we've kind of clustered the 7th grade classrooms in their own little community so that they have their own spaces. We've also created 2 larger group restrooms for that particularly 7th graders. We've got decentralized admin, which could be an assistant principal located directly on this corner. That's that red dot. That will give them better supervision and be able to help monitor the entire 7th grade wing.
Ms. Rinker has a
Sure.
question.
What's the purpose of putting the 7th grade on the 2nd floor and 8th on the 1st?
Well, there's not currently enough room on the 1st floor because there's a culinary lab down there that will remain. So we want to make sure that they have their own neighborhood. Let's put it that way.
You mean
Otherwise, we have to split them up a little bit.
So you want the 7th grade to have their own?
Exactly.
Okay.
There was a lot of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. And I seen, well, they're not numbered, but like on page 18, when you said 16 classrooms, it goes on, 2 dedicated restrooms. Now, there'll be multiple stalls in them restrooms? Like, are you saying 2 dedicated restrooms? That mean, just explain more.
Sure, it's when I say grouped toilet room, that means there are going to be multiple stalls in those restrooms. So they'll function just like another restroom down the hall would. But the 7th graders don't have to go down the hall. They have them right there. Does that make sense?
So we're adding more restrooms than what's currently in the high school? We're
There's-
maximizing what there is?
There is currently one for the boys, and that is here.
Uh-huh.
And there is another restroom that was currently used by the Allied Health Suite, which is right there. But we're going to use that existing plumbing and infrastructure and add another group toilet room there for the girls.
Okay. And then what about, this is for 7th grade we're talking about, right? What about the 8th grade? Will they just use the current restrooms
is
around there, or
correct.
we won't have to add any more?
We will not have to add any more. So we heard a lot of concern from the community about the 7th graders in particular. As far as the 8th graders, there's a less concern as far as mixing them with the rest of the population. So
Okay. Thank you.
continue? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I got one more point here to make. We also have a fine arts lab, which would be a multi-use purpose space, which will be like served for the purpose for music, art, and that space would need to be scheduled rigorously to make sure that it accommodates all of those programs for 7th grade. Okay, so moving on to this wing of the 2nd floor, we discovered that there was an oversized, what used to be drafting, I think, back in my day, computer science classroom to the north of this plan right here. We're going to split that classroom in half and create what would be the 8th grade makerspace and also still retain the enough square footage for that computer science space. Currently, Principal Wolf told us that the teacher would stand in the front of the classroom, students clear in the back can't even hear him because it's too big. Then also the STARS suite that would need to be moved into this school will be located on that 2nd floor right there. Okay, so for the site plan, having sat through I'm sorry.
It's okay. What do you mean by the maker space? Can you explain that for someone that might not understand?
Sure. So a makerspace is a place where students will have the opportunity to, it's a flexible lab. It's going to be a clean lab, so you might have things like 3D printers or cutting devices, things, model building, that kind of thing. And locating it close to robotics, we felt was like a great place for that to occur.
Okay. And in the fine arts, would that also include theater too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so looking at the site plan, so having lived through this drop-off myself, I understand the challenges here on this site. So what we're looking at doing is improving this dramatically for the drop-off specifically and also the parking. But you can kind of see where the half moon circle is there. That's where the current drop-off is. So we kind of overlaid a new plan on top of the old one. So we want to combine that lot into one larger lot. So we don't lose any parking spaces, but we do improve by having 15 additional cars that can stack on site. And what I mean by stacking is that they can park in behind each other in a row to where that they can drop off. The main improvement is going to be now we have 500 additional feet of sidewalk for parents to drop off with 2 lanes so that when you're pulling in, you're pulling up to the sidewalk, you can drop off, and then the person behind you, if he's already dropped off, he can go around you. So it improves that site circulation dramatically and will help speed that process up. Wrong way. Okay, so now I'm going to start talking about the PK through 5 moving to Southern Middle with the 6th grade as far as that project is concerned. Okay, so this is the existing site. I've sat through the traffic jams on this site too. So I kind of want to just point out like what's going on at the existing site. What are some great things that it does right now currently, and what are some challenges? So one of the great things is that it really separates cars and buses very well, which makes a safe, secure environment for the people around the site, for the kids that get dropped off into the school. They don't have to cross paths with buses or people dropping off in their cars. Another great thing that it does is the number of fields that you have on this site is pretty well utilized. I mean, I go by there all the time and see plenty of people playing out there. So a challenge, for instance, though, is during dismissal and during drop-off, you've got a lot of left-hand turns conflicting with other left-hand turns. So you all know, on Broadford Road, it backs up, and it's hard to get through there a lot, right? It really is. And then it's also hard to get through this section of the drop-off, too. And one of the primary reasons there is because as you're pulling in to drop off your kid, there's other people trying to get out of those parking spaces. So we want to try to mitigate and separate those two functions on the site plan. And then secondly, there are a lot of soccer games and other sporting events that go on over here, right? And there's not a ton of parking over there. So if you want to go access those fields, you're going to be walking, pretty good ways to get there, with virtually no facilities and restrooms, that kind of thing. So, all right. So here is a proposed conceptual site plan, and I should reiterate this: by no means is anything that I'm going to show you here set in stone. It's more like here's the grade band alignment, here's the situation, here's a solution that we think could work, right? So we're just kind of working through this with you as a process. So the first thing to point out here is the improvement on the site circulation as far as cars are concerned. So we would propose modifying Broadford Road to an enter only, so it's one way, okay? So now the left-hand turns are not conflicting with other people trying to get out. All right, so now we would also propose separating the drop-off from an internal lot, so that internal lot, people can get out of there without conflicting with the traffic that's trying to drop off. Now this adds another 40 cars for the stacking, which is great. So you have a whole lot more cars on site. It also will maximize the flow, because as you exit the parent drop-off, you will exit through an exit-only road all the way up to Harvey Winters, and that's just a proposed solution for that particular situation. So as far as additional site things we've worked out is the bus drop-off. Okay, so the bus drop-off we've expanded. It kind of overlaps this little pink outline is the existing elementary school, just so you know. But it's expanded so that it accommodates all the staff that will be needed for this building. So it's 125 spaces. 15 buses can park there. And in lieu of doing parallel parking along, like what happens now, they do parallel parking in that loop. We can now have chevron-style parking, which means angled, in the bus drop-off for 15 buses. So they can park there. Now this long red thing that's shown there is a canopy, so that the students, we all know Garrett County weather is great, right? But it's not always. And so the students can get off their bus and go immediately under a canopy and go straight to the entrance. We've also started to look at ways we can enhance community parking spaces. So now maybe we add a community parking lot down here, that's 64 spaces, that people can access these fields during game days or whatever it may be. We've also started to stripe the paved play area. Now that would still have paved play parking, sporting lines, but it would also be striped kind of secondarily for parking in the after hours activities. All right, so what do we have for site amenities?
Hey, Dave, I'm sorry,
yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. For just one more thing about paving, one of the first things that first responders always ask for with our new site design is a loop road, a way to kind of fully accessibilate the full perimeter of your building, and we were able to offer that here with this solution.
That's correct, yes. So that was one of the first things we heard, but yeah, you're right. So site amenities. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about, what added value. You're going to hear me say added value a lot in the rest of this presentation. So what have we been able to do? We've been able to increase the field count on the east side of the site by 1 ball field. So we've got 1 additional ball field. We have 6 6U through 8U multi-purpose fields. And we have 1 U11, U12 multi-purpose field. So now as far as fields go in the west, we're pretty much the same arrangement there. But we have been able to add additional fields for the community to use. We've also considered an enclosed play area, which I'll get into more detail a little bit later, but that would be located here, and that would be in close proximity to Head Start, PK through 2, and the special ed classrooms for safety and security, so that they can go outside and play with a fenced-in area. We're talking about an outdoor classroom. There's a nice area of grade right there where we can easily carve in and maybe terrace up for an outdoor learning environment. We're also talking about a wetland classroom. We're going to need stormwater management because we're adding pavement. Stormwater management means, you've got to take care of the water that comes onto your site. So we can add a pond, and that can be a learning environment. We are talking about potentially adding another play area enclosed down here for what you will see soon as the Judy Center. There's also room for future expansion to the south of the building right here. So we are thinking about that, which turns into answer to one of your questions. Now, if you notice, the brown area in the middle is the existing Broadford Elementary School. The areas in red here that say ADD, probably hard to see, right? Those would be additions. So we're looking at ways to maximize the square footage inside of the shell, but also to provide a new and improved presence along Harvey Winters Road. So if we put an addition here and an addition here, it gives us an opportunity to really revamp the school without spending a ton of money. So this is an example of an outdoor wetland classroom that we've done on a previous project. I believe Laura was pivotal in the completion of this project. This is, yeah, go ahead.
I side, you have like the sun, it says AM, noon, and PM. What's the meaning for that?
Sure. So the sun rises in the east and the sun sets in the west. That's just kind of showing you how the sun, daylighting is very important in schools. We don't take that lightly. It's very important for students to have windows. It's very important for spaces to be daylit. That really just shows the sun's going to be hitting the building on this side in the morning and hitting the building on this side in the evening.
Okay. And you had on there future expansion. What would that be for? Is there a thought process behind that?
Sure. So I can probably explain this a little bit better when I get into the plan, but
Okay,
the
that's
thought
fine.
process there is that we did provide an open space in the center of that bar so that you can add additional classrooms if needed. So if your enrollment in whatever case increases, we have the capacity to do that on this site plan. And the IAC will require us to have a plan for future expansion.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So this is an example of an outdoor wetland classroom that we completed at Grimm and Parker in Montgomery County? Howard County. So you can see the possibilities here. It's a great place for students to go out and learn. They can get exposed to things like wildlife and amphibians, whatever it may be. And a
David,
great learning tool.
I'm sorry. How does the IAC feel about providing money for outdoor wetland classrooms, amphitheaters, et cetera, that seem to be nice?
They are nice, and they're cheap to build, so they are popular with the IAC. Specifically, they have a site number that's kind of lumped into that number. It's just something that they like to see specifically that you've been thinking about it. How are you going to use your spaces? Even a fire lane, that's been looking at something that you add in painted hopscotch or Foursquare into your fire lane because you're going to be able to use that anyways. So anything that you can do to be really maximizing any use of your site is something they'd be on board for.
Okay, so here's an example of a playground area that is fenced in. It's surrounded on 3 sides by the building. So you maximize security with, the building is not many people getting through that. And then you also have a fence on one side so you can access that playground from outside. The great thing about doing something like this is that from inside the building, your students do not have to exit out of that safe and secure zone to get to the playground. Okay, so now we're starting to look at the proposed zoning from where we were that Laura showed you on a slide. Here's where we kind of ended up. So that the proposed zoning kind of started to work itself out that we wanted to make sure we had neighborhoods for all the different grade levels. So this would be the PK through K neighborhood. It's the closest proximity to the playgrounds. 1 through 2 neighborhood. You start to get a 3 through 6 neighborhood down here. You start to get a community neighborhood. So the community access for after hours and everything else is separate from the main school, which will keep everybody out of your school. Then you've got a special ed and related arts kind of at the core. So what's great about another thing that I should really point out here, I think I'm going to point it out on the next slide. So this is kind of how that all shakes out. So it's less diagrammatic. It's starting to show you more hard lines, what those spaces actually are currently sized to be. You start to see head starts here. It kind of weaves around. So with PK, K, first and second, 3 through 4, 5, and 6 down here. And then I guess one of the really important things to point out here is that, this is the main entrance now. So if we move admin here to where it is, that's really putting them in a secure location. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. Right here. So now I'm blowing up these plans into sections, just like we did on the high school. Yes, Monica.
Previous slide, you talked about the courtyard, play yard. So it looks like you're actually removing a part of the school. Is that correct?
Yes. On my next slide, I will provide bullet points as to why, but that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
If you have more questions, we can talk about it after the next slide. Okay. So then, that's going to create a very safe and secure spot for the admin. So security vestibule. So this is the first set of doors that you hit when you get to the school. You can walk into this secure vestibule, and then the only place you have to go is into the admin suite. So your receptionist is going to be your first ring of security. First person you see, the only person. She has control of the next door, which would be here, which would let you get into the rest of the school. If she doesn't press a button, you don't go through that door. If for some reason that ring of security fails, we need a backup plan. So, and these are all CPTED. CPTED is crime and prevention through environmental design, educational, something like that. So if they do somehow happen to get through that first ring of security, the SRO is right there. So he can hop right out into that vestibule and stop them, head them off, and stop any problems that may arise. So that's one of the great things here. Another great thing, and you guys will notice this is a change. So we moved the stage from where it currently is in dining, and I have bullet points for this one too, and we replaced it with health. Okay, so what's the benefit of that? Well, if for instance there is a student that may be sick, whether it be everybody references COVID now, but let's say the student has COVID. Well, it's important to be able to take that student and maybe put him in a secure location so he doesn't infect other people, and then also be able to discreetly get him out of the building so they have immediate access out to where they could go. Or if someone's injured, for instance, if they have a broken ankle and they're in the health suite, they can go straight out to the ambulance. The special ed suite is located here. So we heard from the special ed department heads and other various members of the community that they wanted a suite, right? So they have their own little place. Instructional support is down here, and we also heard that the special ed wanted to be directly located near instructional support in case there was an event, they could have direct access to it. Okay, so now talking about the secure courtyard. All right, I don't know if everyone's familiar with this building, but if you move 50 feet from the north face out to, just keep walking, you're gonna run into a steep hillside, right? So if we were to put the fenced-in courtyard, not take a section out of the building and put the fenced-in courtyard to the north where it really wants to be, we're going to have to do a lot of significant grading, retaining walls, everything, you name it. So our concept here was, let's pick a column line. There's actually an existing, column line right here and right here. What I mean by that, there's steel beams in there. So we can just essentially take out this section of that roof easily without disrupting the other roofing and everything else. We realize it has a new roof. But the added benefit you'll get here is pretty significantly greater than that. So what is that added benefit? Second part of that is ADA accessibility. If we were to maybe say, all right, we don't want to do all that grading, let's put the playground up on that hill. Can't do that because then you can't get a wheelchair up there. We're either going to have to add a significant ramp or do additional grading to get that to happen. So what does this also do? It also adds increased classrooms with natural light. So now, one of the biggest problems I've had with this plan is that there are so many classrooms without windows. And I've heard that from so many teachers too. Like they get really upset that they just don't have a window. So if we can maximize that and we can improve that somehow, this is kind of the concept. So now you have more exterior wall area with more daylighting. It also means you have more supervision. You have more teachers surrounding that courtyard. You can provide more supervision of that space. And it also will allow, this is an open collaboration space for the students to use. It will also allow daylight to filter deeper into the building through to the media center. And then another great point of this is that there's going to be direct access for special ed, Head Start, PK, kindergarten, and then first and second are over here, but they have an easy way to get there.
So what size would you say that would be that we're going to remove out of the building, an estimation?
Oh, I forget. I think it's roughly 1,200 square feet. So it's not a huge amount of area. with a big bang for your buck. So I will tell you, we've navigated this plan without doing it, and the plan is much less, I don't know the word, glamorous. All right, so here's an example of a courtyard and what it might do. This is I love this image. It's a very inspirational image. You can kind of see how the daylight is filtering through and understanding how that can improve the space dramatically. Come on. Okay, so now we're looking at another area of the building. This is what I'm considering the first and second neighborhood and the community wing. So here we've got the first and second. They're all kind of grouped in their own little neighborhood surrounding one large collaboration space. So they have a breakout space, so to speak. There's a teacher planning right there, so there's going to be decentralized admin throughout the whole plan. And then a special ed resource room right there. Now, I remember I was talking about relocating the stage. So our concept is to relocate the stage to the gymnasium. And I'm going to just run through some bullet points. I think I'm getting pretty long here. So accessibility. At the dining space, there is no ramp for the current stage in dining. So it is not accessible. If we touch it, we have to fix that. We will be adding a ramp. If we move it to the gym, we have an opportunity to use an existing gym storage space and make a ramp there. So we can actually accommodate that situation in this particular case and make it inclusive for a disabled student. It should be the same experience if I'm walking to the stage to accept an award as it is for a student in a wheelchair. This will also give us a larger seating capacity. So I've been in that dining space plenty of times when there's a performance, my daughter might be in theater or whatever, and there's tons of people standing in the back, right? So if we can improve the seating capacity, maybe that won't happen. Maybe everyone will get a seat. We can also use the bleachers across the way to provide additional seating. After hours use. If we move the after hours use, which is the stage, to this side of the building, now we can create an after hours entrance that can be safe and secure without letting anybody else through the rest of your building. There's also a potential for an outdoor stage. I have an example of that, but imagine, since this stage shares an exterior wall, if we put a garage door right there, you can have after hours events where people sit outside. Proximity to music classes and tech ed. So with the stage here and not clear over at dining, the music students who are going to be performing don't have to take their instruments as far. If it's close to tech ed, if they're building props and stage sets in there, they don't have to take that stuff as far. Here's an example of an outdoor theater. So not only can it be a teaching area, it also can be used by the community after hours since it's on the community side of the building. This is a project we completed in Newport News, and they use this a lot, even though it's really hot down there. I keep pointing it at the screen.
No, you're good. It doesn't have to be performances either. Sometimes they do outdoor movie events, things like that, and the community really is into it.
Yeah, outdoor movie, I would go. Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot the auxiliary joint point. I missed this whole side. You guys are making me nervous here. So the auxiliary gym. Currently, the auxiliary gym is about this big. It's like Chairman Woods said, it's a wrestling room, right? And it's very small. So with the addition that we're planning on the southwest side of the building, we have the opportunity to make that bigger. So we're going to take that opportunity. There are some structural implications to doing that, to making it bigger in this direction, because the roof actually steps down, so it's not easy to do. But if we do it in the direction of the addition, it'll be fine. And that gym will be approximately the same size as the existing Broadford Elementary School gymnasium, so we will not be losing a court with this scenario. Also should point out the community access for the Judy Center would be completely separate than the community access for the rest of the building. That way they can access that space without you guys opening the rest of the school up when you don't need to. There will also be outdoor toilet rooms located here with access straight outside, so that people visiting these fields over here have access to a toilet. That would be great. And then an outdoor storage space. Come on. I broke it. There we go. Okay, so now we're kind of zooming in on the southeast corner of the proposed plan. You can see the related arts core here, the 3 through 6 wing here, special education, etc. One of the things we really want to do, and because of this site plan, we really need to, is a freezer addition. We want to make sure we can gather all of those outbuildings that are currently on the site and kind of cluttering up things into the main part of the building. Not only so that the kitchen staff doesn't have to go outside to access those storage areas, but also so we can clean up some of that area back there. Sixth grade is located here, so they have kind of their own little corridor, which will make them feel like it's their home. Then we also have open collaboration space down here, which will provide both access for the future expansion that you were asking about, and more daylight further into the building. So here's kind of a view, aerial view, if you will. If you let's just imagine you took a knife and just sliced the top of the building off. This is what you'd be looking at. And we're just trying to show here like the organization, major organization of spaces. Parent drop-off, bus canopy, main entry, admin with the best visibility of the site for safety and security, dining space, there's that play area you're asking about. We've highlighted the media, the PK through K, 1 through 2, 3 through 6, community wing, and the gymnasium. So it's just kind of giving you a three-dimensional view of what that could be. All right, so now the exciting stuff. So I went out the other day, it was kind of cloudy, sorry about that, but this is the before picture. This is Southern Middle School. What we really wanted to try to do is leverage the opportunity for additions and create those additions in a way that would provide a unified element, a unified facade or elevation along Harvey Winters, but make it look like a brand new school. We're not going to try to change and demolish every little section of the building, but if we do something powerful here, it really makes it inspiring and inviting. I mean, the first thing you see when you approach a new school is going to be the front entrance. So that's your first impression, right? So let's make it powerful. That might keep the kids coming back. So then you can also kind of see the play courtyard over here with some play equipment in it. There'd be outdoor seating there too. And then so we're kind of zoomed in and blowing up on the main entry here now. So this is like the wow factor, right? This is where the kids come and they go, oh, look at this great school. It's awesome. You've got the super safety and security from admin here over the front entrance. I took the liberty of naming the school. Just it's flexible. I don't know if it's going to stay Broadford Elementary School, but I did that. So sorry if I. But this is kind of this is the spirit. It adds a whole lot of spirit and a flavor to an existing school without a ton of work. All right. I'm not doing well with this thing. Okay. So now we're going to talk about proposed cost analysis. So before I get into that, I just want to highlight this statement right here, okay? Before everybody gets, fussy with me or whatever. This estimate is based on a current volatile construction market. Now, I don't know if you all know how volatile the construction market is here currently, but you can imagine a building 5 years ago costs about 200% of the cost now, currently, if not more. Is it more? Okay. But the market's it's crazy and subject to change. Now, it could improve. It could dramatically improve. I do not think the construction market is sustainable as it is now. There's just no way it can keep going. It cannot keep escalating. We won't be able to survive. So,
Everybody knock on wood. Everybody find a piece of wood and knock on it right now.
Knock on wood. All right. Sorry, I don't have any. Yeah, no, but I mean, we could be facing better times. That's all my point is. Okay. So, Broadford Elementary School. I'll just cut to the chase here. PK through 6 hard costs. I've separated this out by building site and current elementary school demolition, so you guys can use that as your analysis. And this is done by Downey & Scott, our cost estimating firm, in hand with us. Building, $41,384,094. Site, $4,326,757. Current elementary school demolition, $1,390,356. For a total of $47,101,207. And so far, I think we're kind of in line with what was estimated a couple of years ago. So Southern High, 7 through 12 hard costs. Building, roughly $2.5 million. Site, roughly $600,000. For a total of $3,060,908. Total project cost, PK through 6 and 7 through 12, $50,162,115. We did not separate this out by state and county funding, but 10% is pretty easy to do with those numbers. So, all right, so I want to open it. I'm sorry, next steps. Finalize the program summary for draft submission. I do not need to So next steps, finalize the program summary for draft submission to the Board of Education by 8/25/2022. What that means is if we hear any comments here that make us want to make a major diversion or, make changes to the plans, we're going to do that for you guys before your decision, okay?
Also, the content that we presented today would just be kind of collated into the ed spec. It wouldn't be kind of anything, maybe, well, there'd be things beyond what you've seen, but everything that you saw today is kind of components of the ed spec, to be clear.
Thank you. All right, so then next, finalize schematic design. It's essentially the same. We're gonna. If you have major comments and you didn't like something you saw, we would make changes to that. Final documents for the educational specification Laura touched on. The Board of Education decision at the September board meeting. Okay, so that's now the 19th. Review finalized documents with the IAC pending approval from the Board of Education. So if we were to move forward with this, we would then finalize those documents to go to the IAC and be prepared for their document submission. It's going to be a little different than the ed spec that you get. IAC state submission planned for October 2022. And those are the next steps. So with that, leaving up the wow image and opening up for questions and answers.
David, a quick question. In that $50 million price tag, does it include things like stage curtain, a curtain dividing the gymnasium, to boys and girls, bleachers, basketball, backboards? I guess just so that people are I'm wondering, so I'm sure other people are too, what kinds of things does this not include? Obviously, we know it doesn't include desks and chairs and equipment and things like that. But what kinds of things does it not include that somebody's going to say, well, this is going to cost more because you're going to have to buy these things?
That's correct. So you're going to have two pools of money, really. One is going to be for FF&E, fixture, furnishings, and equipment, right? And then the rest of the hard cost is going to be for the building site and anything fixed, let's say. There will be additional costs for the furniture, yes, and there will be additional costs for other equipment, yes. But anything fixed? Do you have anything else?
In other projects that we've done like this one, we typically evaluate everything that is existing, similar to what you guys were talking about with Grantsville and figuring out, is there anything that we could save? Is there anything that we can shuffle around too? So there's, there's the option to go completely blank slate and buy everything, or there's, you can master plan it over time, maybe things get replaced as there's money involved, but.
Could phase it, right. And as an example, the bleachers in that gymnasium in the middle school are in relatively great condition, right? So we might keep those. And we're not changing the gym, If we want to add new backboards, we'll do that. Yeah.
Mr. Weslowski, you acted like you might want to say something.
We do 5% of the project for the IAC for FF&E, we do 10% for A&E, and the site number, the site is 19%, but that would include for the outdoor classroom and those kind of things that directly kind of relate to the instructional programs that are outside. So we can designate those numbers within the request to earmark those, and that would, the 5% will kind of take care of some of the FF&E things that shouldn't include it.
5% of $50 million is a lot of money.
Certainly is.
Questions, board members? Monica?
So we're going to lose, the projected is for that area for the courtyard playground. But then you look at it, you have added on a few things. Like the one looks like STEM, correct? And the auxiliary gym? Is that what that on? Like when you look at this, add, does that mean the STEM and auxiliary gym?
So that is the addition there is the Judy Center, the half of the auxiliary gym,
Well-
the tech ed space, and the outdoor toilet rooms.
So I would have that here then, probably.
Yeah, but it'll be easier. Just look at this. That was the old plan. Yep. And that's this guy. So this top
Because I'm
corner.
looking at this one with what's added.
Yes, so this corner is added.
Okay, that's what I was
This corner
thinking.
is added. And
Okay.
then
Can you
this
turn
added.
that AC back on?
So that would be this,
Yes.
and this,
Yes.
and
Like the admin kind of secure vestibule
This?
area. Yeah. Like
anything
all of
else?
this guy.
Even this red?
Oh, no, that's the stage. So
Okay, just
stop
that.
in there. Yep.
So those three things are added. Okay?
And the freezer.
I'm a lot hotter.
Yeah,
now.
so that was just
Like,
relocated, basically.
Yes.
Okay, so with those areas it's added, so how much more additional square foot do you estimate that we're adding to the school?
So the current school is 92,000 square feet. We are at 102,000 square feet, which is with what we expect for our gross square footage. So we are adding 10,000 square feet.
Okay, and that includes taking away that one chunk?
Yeah, that's the net, like add, yes.
Okay. And when in your price, to go on what he was asking about, did that include the outdoor stage, or is that something later?
I mean, the cost estimate currently includes all of those things.
Okay, that's what I'll make sure.
Yes.
At-
At this level, right. But again,
Okay.
the big blue bubble that we showed, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Except for the future expansion's not on there. And that play courtyard, you said was like Head Start Pre-K, K1
And two.
and 2. Where is it going to be for 3, 4, and 5?
The current existing playground, let me go there, is going to remain,
Okay.
and I might have to get up and walk around again.
And that would be 6 also.
Yes.
Okay.
Our anticipation is most of the sixth graders play like outdoor play,
Right.
like basketball,
Okay.
kickball, that kind of thing. So they might not be on playground equipment. This is not loading. So there we go. That'll kind of work. Yeah, so you can see those brown rectangles over there?
Yes.
It says existing play. That
Okay.
play area will remain. The students will be able to access that without crossing any traffic. So they can go up and around to the canopy and then back down and around to the play area. So they don't have to cross parked cars.
Okay. And like the Judy Center, you had name is Judy. Do they have their own restrooms in that square, or do they have to leave the Judy Center to go to restrooms?
There currently is space for restrooms. There's an oversized storage, but we can definitely have personal single restrooms in that location.
Okay.
We'll make that change.
So our restrooms are dedicated, like Head Start. Well, do we have a restroom or a sink in like pre-K, Head Start K classrooms?
They are all in the classrooms.
They have a sink.
Yes.
Do they have a restroom?
They'll have a restroom, a dedicated restroom, and everybody will have a sink kind of casework area
Okay.
In the classroom.
in the classroom, yeah.
And
that-
another thing to point out too, I'm sorry, while you're on that topic, is we left the toilet rooms where they are currently. Because that's another issue, that those are costly to move.
Right.
Existing plumbing and everything else under slabs, so we're leaving those there.
Okay. So what grades will have a toilet in them? Is that just the younger grades?
Head Start, Pre-K, and K.
Okay. That's a good idea. That's off right now while I look at my notes. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? David and Laura, that was an incredibly good presentation and an incredibly good document that you presented to us. I mean, it's obviously I'm very familiar with Southern High School, so many of the things that you did there were made a lot of sense. Really made a lot of sense to do. Not as familiar with the middle school, but I think all of us are very impressed with what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
You look at that picture, you've raised the roof on, is that just like the front section? Like it's not in the back, is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually all new construction.
Okay.
Okay, so if I explain it. This is the current back space. Okay, you remove the stage. This is all new. Sorry, this is actually the current stage back space. This is all different. So that's a new entry piece. So we don't have to destroy anything to make that happen. You know, it's all new construction.
I believe you had for your transportation, you had 15 bus spots. Is that currently what we would have now, Rich? Is 15 at one time?
Yeah, first wave and then we go to high school.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. Are you attending our 23rd listening session? I assume you are. March or August 23rd?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
That's the community meeting.
It's the
right?
community
Yeah,
listening
yeah.
session on the 23rd.
You gave it a different name. I was
Okay.
confused.
And then we'll see if there's any new input that we've not heard from that. And then on the 19th, we'll invite you back as the board will, I guess, make a decision.
Great.
But hearing no other questions, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Great. Thank you guys for this opportunity.
We have one other final business item. That's EEBAA Vehicle Use Policy and Procedure, first reading. I assume Mr. Wisłowski is going to make that presentation.
The boards they brought for display, where are we going to have those if somebody wants to look at them? Are we going to have them somewhere where people can look? I just thought about that.
Our goal is to put one at the board office and one at Broadford, one at Southern Middle, and one at the high school. A set of each one.
Okay, so we have more than one set of these. Okay, thank you.
This is first read for EEBAA, Vehicle Use Policy and Procedure. This is as a result of a change in COMAR 13A 0607.11 from the legislative session. In a nutshell, it was always a type 1 or type 2 school bus to transport kids to and from. This just expanded the transportation continuum to now allow transportation in the for a multi-school activity vehicle, which is like your white van that you would normally see. And also, as we currently own the Durangos in the Suburban, so we can also use the alternative vehicles now to do that. Along with that expansion, there was some different training for the individuals that are going to drive them, different inspections for the vehicles. That's all kind of laid out in there in the policy and the procedure. Okay.
Any initial questions about the first read of this revised policy procedures?
So you were saying the alternative school vehicle, it's basically would include vehicles that we already own, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What does it mean by, though, E, on that, for the procedure, multi-function school activity bus, an alternative school vehicle that meets school bus construction standards that may not be used to transport students to and from home or school bus stops, does not have traffic control equipment, and is not painted school bus yellow?
Yeah, it's the white, it's just a white van. It's larger than a van. I meant to bring a picture to show.
It's nothing that we currently own,
No,
correct?
we don't own that.
Okay, that's what I was confused when it said, okay.
It's just something in the future, if we feel it's a viable tool to transport kids, we would have that option.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay.
That's all I have right now, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll see you in September. I think there's a song like that, too. See you in September. Alexis, you've waited very patiently. You're on.
I don't know. There we go. I don't have much because school's about to start, but GCASC members are meeting at Perkins at 9 a.m. on Thursday to discuss plans for the upcoming year. And then I recently attended the MAVE Student Board member orientation on August 4th. During that time, I met other SMOBs from different counties, as well as learned more about the responsibilities of SMOB. I also learned some tips to help me be a successful student member of the board, and some of the information I got from the orientation I'll take with me to add to my SMOB presentation I'm working on. Our local student councils aren't doing too much right now. They're just preparing for the upcoming school year and brainstorming different ideas about fundraisers and possible Spirit Week ideas. And then just general student updates. In the next few weeks, students will start to receive their class schedules for the new school year, and then fall sports start tomorrow. But that's all I have.
Any questions, comments for Alexa? Okay. Any board member updates that you'd like to share? Pardon me?
Just quickly, I was able to participate with the superintendent, state superintendent, and the president of the state board, and it was practically a one-on-one conversation because they wanted a representative from every board, and they had 4 sessions. Our session, there was just me and Worcester County and one other county. So it was a productive meeting because you really got to know the state board president a little bit better, and also the superintendent. And so we had some good discussions about funding and what type of indicators do you can use for student success, and that we need more quickly. We need, so everybody wants some performance management systems and that type of thing. So it was a good meeting, I thought. If you want to watch it, it's on the MABE website. But you really got to be desperate.
Anything else? Anyone? Yes, Monica.
Remind people to come Tuesday, August 23rd at 6 o'clock at Southern Middle, correct? To give comments on what you've seen this evening. And we'll have the boards on display also that night, correct? We can have them there, all of his drawings. And then a reminder that our September board meeting has been changed to Monday, September the 19th, and it'll be here again, correct, at Dennett Road.
Yep. Anything else? Okay. Hearing nothing, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Jason. Second by Matthew. Discussion. All those in favor of adjourning public session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And we are adjourned.